Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 15 of 13th and Elm. My name is Sweet Bill. Of course, you know me. I'm the host this week. Joined, as always, by Throat and Tex. What's up, guys? You might know him as Michael and Rob. How we doing?
Doing great.
Not responding to that name.
Rob?
Tex?
Tex.
I'm fucking Throat, and not in the good way.
You guys picked these, by the way?
I didn't pick that. That was foisted upon me.
Anyway, this week, the movie was Midsommar, Ari Aster's second feature-length film, released in 2019 with a 2-hour, 28 runtime. That's right, guys. This is a long movie, and it is dense. So let me get through a quick little synopsis, and we'll get into it. This film follows a group of friends who plan on traveling to Sweden to attend a fabled midsummer festival that quickly turns increasingly bizarre and violent. The group of friends is led by Christian, who's played by Jack Rayner, who was born in Longmont, Colorado, plan to travel to complete writing their theses, and is somewhat forced to pity invite his girlfriend Danny, played by the impeccable Florence Pugh. After she suffers from an unthinkable tragedy, the group arrives safely to the festival, but it quickly is not what it seems. Like I said, it grows more dangerous, and the frequent consumption of hallucinogenic drugs makes it even more difficult to comprehend what is going on. Another notable name in the film that you guys know is Will Poulter, who plays the obnoxious comedic relief friend Mark. Most people know him from Kenny, the lovable idiot in We're the Millers, which is a great movie. This one is pretty polarizing in the horror community. Part of that's probably because of Ari Aster's huge success with Hereditary that came out only a year prior. This was your guys' second viewing. I've seen this a couple times. What did you guys think after seeing it for the second time?
I absolutely loved it. I'm going to try not to gush too much about it, but
Gush away.
We got plenty of time ahead of us in order for me to do that, and believe me when I tell you I'm going to be practicing brevity for the sake of the Elmers tonight, because I have so much to say, and I absolutely love this movie. I saw it once in theaters, loved it then, kind of forgot a little bit about it just because I wanted to push it out of my memory because I did enjoy it so much. This was my second viewing. Oh my God, I loved it even more. And following what you were saying about this being his second feature-length film, I did see Hereditary in theaters as well. Loved it. But I remember leaving the theater both after Hereditary and after Midsommar, and it was decidedly obvious to me after my viewing of Midsommar that, in my opinion, this was the superior... I almost don't want to say it because they're apples and oranges, but I enjoyed this movie much more than I enjoyed Hereditary. And
Really?
I've still only seen Hereditary the one time, but after watching Midsommar again, I would be absolutely shocked if I preferred Hereditary more than this.
Damn.
This is a bar that hasn't been equaled for me in the last 10 or 15 years of horror. This is a fucking masterpiece.
Fair enough. What about you, Rob?
I did not love this movie the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
We saw it together in the theater
We did.
with Sweet Bill's wonderful wife and mother of his children, Kaya. And I think a lot of it was sort of preconceptions, what I thought it was going to be, especially after having seen Hereditary, and it just, I don't know. This happens a lot. You expect a movie to be a certain way, and you see it, and you're disappointed or upset maybe because it wasn't what you wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was definitely the same way. But this movie, like Michael said, is kind of like how The Witch is for me too. Is every time I watch it, I seem to like it a little bit more.
Well, don't cut me off, but yeah, I totally agree. The second viewing, I'm not even joking when I say I saw this film with new eyes. And there's a lot I'm going to get into it, and maybe even a hot take, maybe a lukewarm take. I don't know. You guys aren't going to like it at all. That's what I got to say.
Is it because you're wearing glasses this week that you saw it with new eyes?
No, but yes. No, this film, I now know what it is, and I didn't when I first saw it. The second viewing was really enjoyable, and I won't say anything further.
Well, you will, just not yet, right?
Just not yet.
Okay, we'll get into it.
Nope, that's the end. I'm done. I'm just going to sit here and listen.
Let's just jump into it. The first 15 minutes of this movie is one of my favorite first 15 minutes in any movie, any genre. I mean, it starts out with, these beautiful paintings of, tons of foreshadowing. There's so much foreshadowing in this fucking movie. And then you get that A24 score. It's really eerie, the heavy strings. I love it. The great snowy shots that quickly come into the houses. And this is when I always forget how quick in this movie this happens, because I feel like when I first saw it, it felt like it had been going on for like 30 minutes or so before this happened. And every time I watch it, it feels like the tragedy that happens to Danny, played by Florence Pugh, is pretty much the first real scene.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I will also say that the first 2 minutes of this film, if I had seen it blind, didn't know what it was about or who directed it, and you told me this is Wes Anderson's new film, I would have believed you.
Yeah. It's a pretty spooky intro for him, I feel like.
Yeah, but just the framing of it, especially the painted, like, the first scene of this film tells you literally the entire film.
Entire movie, yeah.
But yeah, the tragedy is emotional, and at a certain point, and I don't want to just like do a disservice to it, but it's kind of a means to an end. Like, it is important, and it's a great scene. It's a great series of scenes, and before it happens, you immediately get an idea of the sort of relationship that Christian and Danny have just from the phone call. He sounds more like a kind of a fair weather friend than a boyfriend.
He's annoyed that she's calling him when he's high, eating pizza out with his friends, obviously.
Oh, did we have something tonight? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, no. Okay, yeah. Sure.
See if I can swing by.
I love you.
Yeah, but he is checked out and wanting to bring closure to the relationship, and it's not a secret. He wants out, and I guess, like, on one hand, you got to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's getting ready to pull the trigger on something that's probably emotionally difficult, and like and we'll get into it, but we definitely weren't there for the 3 years leading up to 3.5, 4. Yeah,
4 years, 2 weeks.
But we weren't into their relationship prior, and we don't know a lot of their dynamic, and we're thrown into the movie kind of at this point. And I guess there's not a lot of redeeming qualities, and this is probably the only time you hear me, I wouldn't even call it defending Christian, but probably one of the only times I'll try to put myself in his shoes, because for the most part, he's a feckless coward. But in this situation, he can either leave, which is kind of what he's going to do and preparing himself to do. It seems kind of like the ritual with his like fraternity, not literally, but like, his brother, and he's kind of getting ready to sever the ties of this relationship when he gets the news from Danny. And I guess really what would have been the better move? He could have just left her at a time when she needed some sort of support system and some sort of demonstration of empathy. And I think that what he did, you nailed it. Like, he is a friend. He just kind of like did the friend thing, which maybe wasn't the right thing. And it certainly set up the parable of like a relationship drama, which a lot of this movie is, I think. And let's just jump into it. We have kind of beat around the bush, but Danny's sister, Terry, has sent some cryptic emails, and she's kind of alluded to some self-harm, and I guess that she's bipolar, as Danny mentions, and there's some reasons for concern. And a lot of this movie also, not just a breakup metaphor, but there's a lot of mental health kind of themes in this movie. And this is one of the first ones, but Danny's sister Terry ends up killing herself and their mother and father, Terry and Danny's mother and father. And it's very brutal and violent, and it does happen quick. And so one of the biggest criticisms that I've seen in this movie, most popularly, is that this is completely unnecessary to the film, and that it doesn't get fleshed out or touched upon very much moving forward. And there's a lot of people who certainly know a lot more about film than I do who believe this. A few scathing reviews from fucking Richard Brody of The New Yorker and like Peter Travelers and stuff really didn't like this movie. But I couldn't disagree more. I think that this is so important to the
Oh,
film
absolutely.
for me. And not only in the dynamic of the relationship, but also in the whole theme of the film with Danny searching for empathy, searching for support, how she has become a victim of loss of trust, betrayal, abandonment. And I mean, it all leads itself to the classical narrative of a fairy tale, which I believe this movie is 100% a fairy tale. You can't change my mind, and I don't think you guys believe different.
I believed it was the first time I watched it. I thought it was a dark fairy tale. I don't think that's an incorrect summation of it. But now in my second watch, this film is a pitch black comedy, and I am not kidding around. Like it is an absurdist comedy. I've got a lot to support this. I don't think you guys are going to agree with me, but that's okay. And I will also shit on Danny quite a bit because despite that, Christian is not a likable character. He's not written to be likable. He's feckless. He's cowardly. Like, he's emotionally unintelligent and selfish. He's shitty to his friends. He's shitty to Danny. He's shitty to himself. Danny is kind of an emotional vampire, and some of that is not 100% her fault, and especially the situation that she is in at the very beginning of the film. But before the tragedy happens, she's talking to her friend on the phone about how, I don't want to scare him off, like maybe I'm too needy, like maybe I should like reel it back, and basically I should pretend to be a different person to keep this guy around because I need him to be my rock. I need something to keep me standing, and that is honestly, I think, as bad as him beating around the bush and refusing to pull the trigger when everybody can understand it. Danny knows it. He knows it. Their friends know it. Everybody in the village knows it. Like, it's palpable. And I hate that so many of these reviews talk about how great Danny is and how shitty Christian is. Like, no, they're both bad people. They're both very codependent. It's just that the stuff that Christian does, you see on the screen. It's more, I don't know. It's more physical. What he says, how he says it, what he doesn't say.
I disagree. I disagree with that. And I'll tell you why. I think it's pretty obvious that Danny has a severe anxiety disorder, and when she's talking with her friend, that's like the inner workings of an anxious mind. She's not trying to. I don't think she means that she wants to be a different person, so he'll stay or anything like that. She's worried that her real self, her anxious self, is pushing him away, and she knows that if she got better, didn't have anxiety or whatever, then it would be fine. And there's plenty of other times later in the film that I would say like support that she has a lot of anxiety too. So
no, I don't mean to belittle that.
Yeah,
or the bipolar, which I don't really agree with that either. The way he paints the sister, but it's part of the story. This is not the first time that she's had, Terry's had an issue and has gone to Danny for help. But I think Mark says it best, and which is a weird thing to say, but she needs a therapist, and Christian is not. Christian is not a trained professional, and he's done with the relationship. He's done putting stuff into it, and we can say as much bad things about that, but he doesn't need to be or have to be that person. And she is not gaslighting, but she's crafting her personality in a way to keep him around. And that is kind of a selfish thing to do, regardless of the anxiety, regardless of what she feels, which is real. But I don't think we should absolve her from her actions just because she's in a bad place and has had going through a tragedy and is trying to get over it. Right, and that Christian's a shitbag.
Interjection here, because I don't think an absolution is necessary to enjoyment of the film, nor do I think it's even probably something that Ari Aster felt he wanted from the viewer. And my justification for that argument can be surmised in the final 3 seconds of this movie. I don't think that Danny is any sort of heroine to this story. And I think that a lot of the dismissal of Christian as the bad guy in their relationship, or even potentially like abusive, is choosing to look at it through one lens, but it's a valid lens. And I think that your assessment of Danny is another lens that's also valid. And this whole dynamic that we're talking about right now is why I will say that this opening scene and this foundation is not only critical but brilliant. And for anybody out there just dismissing it, maybe it didn't land with you, or you were not as sympathetic to the realities of human nature, because the fact that we can sit here for the first 15 minutes of this podcast and argue about the first foot that we set out on kind of paints the depth that these characters have. And to be selfish is to be human. And let's take away all of the mental health issues that could be overarching themes here and just talk about being young 20 somethings and like trying to figure out who you are. And it is a difficult path, especially when you compound it with loss and trauma. And then if you also add in, clinical conditions, it's difficult. And I think that this film, in its short amount of time, and many people, like I said, argue that they don't come back to these themes. I argue that the entire film is about these themes, but in the short amount of time that they lay this foundation, I think it is clear that it's given us enough fat to chew on. Like, we could probably talk about this dynamic for another hour.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's actually really good, because I think that both these characters are human and both are not ideal, and they both have their flaws. And when you're 20-something and living in the world for the first time on your own and finishing school and trying to get ready for that next step in your life, I think it's really hard to kind of understand not only who you are, but who you want to be and how to act that out. And I think that the narrative that Danny was portraying with her friend via this telephone conversation is very honest and raw about that. And I would say even the same thing about Christian and his group of friends, but they're just coming from two different points in life. And I think maybe that's the main source of their conflict to begin with. They're at different stages.
This is a great movie. I wouldn't take anything out of it, but I feel that the tragedy, not only the nature of it, but how it's shown on screen, is not actually necessary in what it is. The tragedy is important, but if it wasn't for how graphic it is and how much it pervades, like, her mental state and, like, her, kind of getting into the village, which we'll get into later, like, kind of their culture and stuff, like, it's important to that. It comes back to that. But this film is a breakup movie. That's literally how Ari Aster describes it. Like, this is a movie that not only is about a breakup, but it's a movie that he wrote after going through a pretty serious breakup in his personal life. And when I first saw this film, I thought, oh, this is The Wicker Man. Because how could you not? How can you not compare the two? But when he was interviewed and asking about what films he was watching to, like, get in the headspace to write this film, they were all romantic comedies. In fact, the specific one that he comes back to that is his, like, after a breakup movie is Modern Romance, which is a 1981 film, and it's kind of a weird movie. It's about a film editor who's, like, kind of has an off-on-again relationship with his girl, and him wanting to break up with her but not wanting to, and, like, calling her and then getting jealous because she's seeing other people. And I had it on in the background when I was, like, looking over my notes before I picked you up. But this film is a breakup and a black comedy. If it wasn't for the extremely graphic suicide murder at the beginning of it and some of the other scenes that are pretty graphic, this would be a John Hughes movie. You would put a completely different soundtrack to this film, and it would be more funny, and it would be clearly a comedy.
Right.
But because it's Ari Aster, and
it's not. Things.
But
right.
When this was screened in Sweden, because they don't give you dialogue for most of the Swedish talking parts, it was received as a black comedy over there.
Yeah.
It was, quote, like a deranged comedy. And I actually made a playlist, which we were listening to in the car, that's a deranged comedy, and it's a lot of George Harrison. And,
I do think that the murder-suicide sets the table for the tone as well, being presented kind of as a horror film or horror adjacent, especially off the heels of Hereditary. He had to know that he was going to have some sort of fervor around his work, and that there was going to be a certain loyalist crowd that was going to go out and seek it. But I kind of agree with you. I think that this movie is a lot of style over substance, and that's kind of obvious in its presentation and its cinematography, its colors, the ambition behind the whole presenting 99% of the movie in daylight. But it does establish early on, like, the torment emotionally and, like, the visceral gore and it's checking boxes early on to let you know that this is going to be found in the horror section, even if it might be branching. And I do think that it extends itself into multiple genres, but I think that because of time and place and the names associated with it and the soundtrack and some of the imagery, it falls firmly into horror. And I think that Ari Aster knew that when he put in this particular scene and a couple others, like they needed to make sure that the movie felt horrific. And I think that when you have the opening being winter and cold and dark and blustery, and all the tones of the inside of the house are muted, and you're looking at Danny, she has like no network of friends, right? Like she has no human contact.
The one friend on the phone never is brought up
Yeah.
again.
But it's like she's in a situation in her life that is clearly negative, both because of her relationship and then because of the tragedy that befalls her. But like if you just look at the way that the film is shot and what is, I think, is trying to be explained without saying it outright, is like something needs to change. And I think it's just extorting the viewer into getting into that headspace of horror. And I think that's why the film remains in horror, and to me, not a black comedy. But I also see and acknowledge what you're saying, and I don't speak Swedish.
No, you don't, and neither do I. Also, a lot of the Swedish actors are known for comedy in their home country. The actress that plays Siv, the actor who plays Sten, the two elders that are basically running the whole thing, are both comedic actors. So is Ulla, who's the woman who is like giving Danny and Christian the drink towards the end of the film. They're known as being comedians in their home country. But beyond that, like, you have a tragedy in your life, you're a young 20-something American, you're getting out of college, what do? You go to Europe. It'll fix everything. Everything will be fine. Let's go to Bonnaroo. Let's go to Sweden.
Yeah, why not?
And they do exactly that. And I love Mark in this movie. I hated him the first time I saw this, but Will Poulter's character, he's like sitcom level horny in this film. Constantly, every bit of dialogue that comes out of his mouth is hilarious. And at first it was off-putting and tonally, like, I couldn't really, square it. But now watching this as a black comedy, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I love this guy. Oh, you need to find a girl who actually wants to have sex. Or like, damn, like what is with those girls in Sweden? They're like, oh, they stole all the beautiful babes from all over the world.
Yeah.
And then them like getting there and like taking the mushrooms and being like, no, man, you gotta take it now. It'll be totally different trips. I don't want new people right now. Like, it just gets better from there.
Yeah, my favorite thing that he does is especially at the festival, just in the crowds and stuff, you see him vaping too.
Vape-nish.
I love that.
He's clearly not supposed to be likable.
Yeah.
His name is Mark. Which is
You already
Chad or
don't
Joe.
like him.
Well,
No, but I mean that is like a slang. You know what I mean? It's a dismissive term.
I'm actually surprised they didn't name the other two Matthew and John. Because Christian, it's a little on the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's vaping. He's horny. He's well casted and well acted, to be honest. And he's got like just such a loathsome, fucking punchable face too. Like the entire time, like his face is gonna change.
For eternity.
Work.
I think he's like attractive.
Yeah.
Yeah, not like wow, but like he's a good-looking guy. And the eyebrow game definitely plays into that.
And I do like how Ari Aster has said that he is like deathly afraid of bugs and ticks, which is why
The socks.
Yeah, which is why Mark is like that too, and is seen wearing socks over his jeans, and when they're walking up to the festival, they're like, my grandfather died of ticks, so we had to had a closed casket.
They're like back and forth
like,
when they're
what?
walking. You're like, wait, what? It's like, I have an uncle that has Lyme disease. Okay, it's not even funny. No, his comic relief is over the top and perfect. But yeah, after they've had this thing planned for months probably.
Oh yeah.
And clearly he was planning on dumping her before they were even setting out, and because of the tragedy, the murder-suicide, and his own cowardice, which I don't know if it's better or worse that they stay together. It depends on your point of view, I guess. But it's not truthful, and it's in the end it's pretty harmful to both of them, fatally in one case.
And I love this scene when we find out that that Danny's going, which is they're all hanging out doing schoolwork.
They're
and,
like talking about her when she's walking up the stairs.
yeah, he tells his friends 5 seconds before she's at the door. By the way, I invited Danny to come to Sweden, but she's not coming.
Don't worry, she's not going to actually go.
She doesn't want to go?
She doesn't want to go. No.
Well, no, she's accepted actually, but she's
not
gonna
going.
come.
Yeah, but she's not going to go.
And this is like 2 weeks out from the trip that they've had that's been planned for months that he has kept secret from Danny for some time until she overheard somebody else talking about it at a party.
Yeah.
But this was a great scene cinematography-wise because you have like it's like a framed and like it's just like a black like piece of paper or art or wood or whatever. It's just black with like glass in a frame, and it's hanging above the couch from the perspective when you walk into the door, and you have the gentleman sitting there talking to Pele about the trip that they're going to take, and you can see Danny and Christian enter the room, and kind of everybody's heads snap up, and you can just see the reflection of Danny and Christian in the art, whatever, on like the glass,
The portrait,
yeah, frame, and I don't know. I love that because there's no, again, until we get to, what is it? Haggard? What is it?
Halgensgard? Shit, I didn't write it
No.
down.
I wrote it down.
Helsingland.
Halsingland.
Yeah, but what's that community?
The
called?
Harga.
Harga.
Yeah, so until you get there, she doesn't have any like real like connection and communication with anybody aside from Pele, which we'll get into that. But like this whole social interaction was a reflection. You know, previously she had been on the phone, but this was a reflection, all mirrored in black. There's so much disconnect and social coldness to her interactions in the beginning parts of this film. And you said earlier that it ends up being quite detrimental to both of them. And while that is true, and obviously true in many ways, I think that you could make an argument saying that this was healthy for Danny, this trip, and especially how it ended.
We can argue about that.
She gains everything she loses.
No. She gains what she wants. She didn't gain what she lost. Those are different things. And I think that what she wants is extremely dangerous because from the moment that she takes the mushroom tea, she is on the edge of a mental break. And you see it
before that. What are you talking about?
I'm just saying, like, the precipice. Like, you're about to jump off a cliff and kill yourself kind of thing.
Well, dude, okay, so this actually like, if you can't take all that away from, like, the murder-suicide and losing all of her family and, like, feeling that her boyfriend's going to leave her.
Well, running away from her problems to go to Sweden because that will fix things.
You're getting ahead of me. What I was going to say is begins when she's talking to Pele and he's talking about he's sorry for her and her family. And she gets up and she says, I have to go to the bathroom. And you can tell that she begins to scream. And then when it shows her screaming, she is on the plane in the bathroom. So she's already.
A great cut.
Yeah, it was a great
It's
cut.
fantastic.
This is very good editing.
And I love that reaction that she has too, because it totally says, oh, like this is the first time that someone's given me like a real like apology or like has acknowledged what happened. I feel like because obviously he probably didn't get that from Christian. I mean, maybe whatever unnamed girl she's talking to on the phone, whatever. But I feel like that's the reason she's like someone is like actually feels bad for me and cares about me, and that's what makes
it's
her break
validation.
down. Yeah.
But he doesn't actually care. It's all calculated.
No, he doesn't. But I mean,
but
that makes it so much better.
It's the
in
first,
a way.
yeah, it's the first like human interaction she's had with somebody about the serious thing she's been ignoring, where all the friends and even Christian have kind of like pat her on the back, like, "Oh, it's so bad. Oh, don't cry," and he's being real with her about it.
This is the first display of another theme that occurs in this film quite a bit because one of the reasons why I love this movie so much is it's clearly a cult, and I don't mean like a cult classic. I mean a movie about a cult. And this is step one in recruitment for all cults. This is love bombing. This is validation, and it is something that Pele is really effective at. And I think that, as with any cult, the reason why it's so effective is because there is part of it that is genuine, actually.
I mean, he full-heartedly believes in the cause and what he's doing, too.
And I think he also he has his eyes on her as potential May Queen, which we'll get into. But even the picture of last year's May Queen, I mean, that's Florence Pugh. Like, I mean, clearly.
Oh, is it? I didn't catch that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's identical. I think that he kind of knows where all roads are going to lead, or at least like ideally. And if not, that really doesn't matter to him either. But in a world where he could demonstrate some sort of compassion and have an outcome that is perceived to be in her best interest, I think he's open to that possibility too. And I think that he knows that if he believes in that, it'll be more effective and likely to happen.
I think you catch more flies with honey. So, if you're trying to convince a bunch of Americans to come to your weird commune that you grew up in, and to be fair, throughout most of the film, I think all of the Harga, including Pele, they lie through omission, but when they're asked specific questions, they speak truthfully, but in a kind of not a dismissive, but like in a happy, smiley, vaguish way that could be taken a different way, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And in this way, I feel like they're kind of like fairy folk. They kind of like they can't lie, like they can clearly, but the way that they present themselves is like idyllic and and
I think
happy
they are
and
idyllic
utopian
by their own standards. They are not only
unless you're 72.
brainwashed, they're indoctrinated. And dude, being 72, I don't think that those things change. Like when you believe in something, you believe in something. And I think that these people believe in something. And I think that that's like a big part of the narrative as well. I think this is why it becomes a horror film in a lot of reasons outside of the I don't know, the imagery and the names associated with it. But I think it's a horror film because of like, it's an American film, right? And Americans have like a weird relationship with religion. Honestly, there's a big disconnect from like just traditional celebration, and I don't know, man. It's really weird, the relationship that we in the West have with. I'm trying to think of the word, and I'm just buying time, so I apologize. But
That's okay.
We're uncomfortable with this idea. Completely.
I agree with you, and I think it goes even deeper than that. I think that specifically with men in this country, and women too, but there's no other cultures, other minorities, like you have the bar mitzvah, you have the quinceañera, like you have these sort of marking a passage of time where you are officially an adult in your community. And by and large, like Americans, like they don't have that. And I think part of that too is as the immigrant nation, like Ancestry.com, that shit is not important in other countries because they have culture. And I don't mean that Americans don't have culture, they totally do. But as far as like, why is that so popular with white Americans? Why do they love that so much? It's because they want to feel a belonging to something longer, greater, established than what they grew up with and their family and their grandparents, whatever. Like unless you were a farmer and all your parents were farmers and your grandparents were farmers and you have some sort of like identity, like a social identity, it's very easy to try on flavors and cultures as like a way of finding yourself. And so it speaks to me in that these guys are not only horny and young and they want to, go impregnate Swedish women and all that, but that is specifically an American ideal that you need to go find yourself and you need to uncover the true you and all that, whereas Pele and everyone else in the horror community know who they are because they have nothing else. Like they're in a cult. Like you could leave, sure, but they don't.
But do you mean? I mean, we don't really get the sense that any of them are doing the trip for that reason, right? Except for Danny. Is that what you mean? Because I mean,
no, more like just the general idea of Americans going overseas and experiencing another culture as
wanting to write a
tourists.
thesis on it.
Also that.
You know what I mean? Like that's the draw.
Well, it is for Josh, but yeah, Christian doesn't really know what he's doing, and Mark just wants to get laid, and
Pele's going home.
Pele's
and
going home
tagging along.
And tagging along.
I think that's a very realistic dynamic for 5 people at that age, though. You know what I mean?
It is. It is. But I'm just saying, like, as far as, I don't know, American culture, like that, it spoke to me in that way.
Definitely.
But did you guys see the banner before they get in?
yeah, when during the inverted car shot that we get.
Wonderful cinematography.
I can't remember exactly what it says, but I have a feeling you do.
So it kind of gives away some of what the cult is about, that they're
Yeah.
not this idyllic. It says, stop the mass migration to Helsingland.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like white supremacists. They're
Nationalists, for sure.
not even nationalists. Like they don't want people in their community, in their commune. They pick all the mates, you know. Also, we'll get into this later, but the only 2 non-white people are killed off with really no reason other than that they're needed for the ritual. Like, they don't do anything wrong.
That's not true. There's 3 non-white people, and one of them is definitely killed for a reason.
Oh, okay, the 2 Londoners, sorry. Right. Josh is killed for I don't know about good reason. He's killed for a reason that makes sense within the community. But Connie and Simon, I mean, aside from an outburst at Stupa, like, they don't do anything wrong. They're just there as fodder.
I mean, they're there to die.
Yeah.
No, I know that, but like everybody else, like has some sort of like sin or something that they've done that they're still there to die. They're still there, brought there as sacrifices, but like there's at least some reasoning for it. And all the men are killed as well. But you know that like those people look at everybody in the Harga community. They are fucking pale as milk. They got blonde hair or red hair, and that's it.
I would argue that there was
northern Swedish though. Like to be fair, they are northern Swedish.
Are you saying northern Swedes are
typically fair-skinned and fair-haired? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. I'm just saying the banner is like the Swedish equivalent of like build the wall when you're coming into their community.
Can we talk about that inversion scene though, real quick?
It's gorgeous.
And
I love it, and
perfect.
Disorienting.
Much more than the beginning of Candyman.
That's so funny.
Well, there were other things involved with that, but yeah.
But yeah, such a cool shot, and I love the score in this movie, and I noticed that in a lot of times there's like, I mean, yeah, it's music, but it just seems like it's noise. Like there's a lot of scenes like when we first see what happened with the murder-suicide, and some scenes of when they first land in Sweden. It's just like high-pitched machinery noises. It's very unsettling. I love it.
So this is Ari Aster had a lot of influence on that, and he personally chose a musician to collaborate on the soundtrack for this, who had not had any experience in film soundtrack prior to this. It's English DJ whose name is Bobby Krylik, who goes by the Haxon Cloak. And Ari Aster was listening to his album Excavation quite a bit while he was writing this, and he actually ended up reaching out to him. And then they worked together to come up with the score for this film. And I think that this is one of the better like scores and soundtracks of any film that comes to mind recently. I know we just did a great one too with The Witch, but I mean, this is up there for kind of the same reasons. And I don't know, I love this, all of the sound in this movie as well, and the lack of sound as well. But the soundtrack is quite on point, and particularly in this scene with the inversion of the camera as they drive by in the car and they begin to enter the commune. It's, again, super unsettling because you have all of this ominous music, this calamity occurring that is unsettling, but then also quite literally the world of these 5 individuals is turned upside down. They are in a new place. Everything that they thought was no longer is. I mean, in the daylight, the disorientation, the trip that they're about to take right when they get in there, this is a literal turning point in the film. And it wasn't a quick shot. They sustain that and hold that for quite some time. And I really think it gives the viewer the opportunity to soak that in. This was not subtle. This was clear. And if you couldn't take it away, I mean, maybe the first viewing you're caught up in the moment, but this time around, it's so obvious, especially knowing what's going to happen. But seeing this happen, you're just, oh, shit. You know, everything just got turned on its ear. And I loved it. I love it. This is another example of the genius of Ari Aster.
I'll say that the score in this film definitely reinforces that this is a horror, this is a scary movie. And I am really curious about, I don't know if I'm going to really do this, it's kind of a long film, but I'm not kidding you when I mean I'm building a playlist of this film as like a dramedy. And I kind of want to watch the film on mute with subtitles and listen to like I Got My Mind Set on You and fucking like I I just think that without it, like the comedy would be much more apparent. I don't know,
Fair enough.
but
That's the whole point, though, right?
it is
Because
it
the
is.
horror becomes more apparent, right? And
It does on the first viewing, but again, man, like watching this, and then after I watched this the second time, I read a couple and watched a couple interviews with Aster, and he talks about how he wanted to make a horror folk movie, and you already know where a horror folk movie is going to go. You got a cult, you got outsiders, they're going to get killed. You know where this is going, even if you've never seen The Wicker Man. You know where this is going. So he wanted to create a skeleton of folk horror, but then animate it with a romantic comedy without fucking up the spine, I think is his actual quote, which totally tracks, in my opinion. And when they get to the actual community and they walk through the sunburst gateway,
another
and
great scene.
gorgeous, right? And you see everybody in there, and they kind of pan. There's a lot of like 360 shots or 180 shots where they're kind of panning around. It was funny to me. Like I kind of laughed out loud because you see all these kids. Everyone's wearing white. Like it.
It looks. I mean, it looks like they're putting on a show. Like they've practiced how to look like a perfect community. There's kids, skipping and playing. There's people playing the flutes.
The field is like perfect.
Not flutes, but
yeah, no, they are. They're playing like
whatever.
flutes and recorders. There's like everything. Like the grass is perfectly green, perfectly manicured. Like and without the actual music, a lot of scenes where there's no soundtrack and no one playing instruments. It's totally silent. You don't hear birds. You don't hear animals. You don't hear water bubbling. Like nothing. And it's really unsettling. But you get this first shot of the Harga, and I wrote down Mennonite hobbits because that's kind of what they look like. And what they're wearing is not a Swedish national dress. It's actually Ukrainian. They're called what are they called?
Sami.
No, those are like the indigenous people of like Finland and Lapland. But what they're wearing, what the Harga people are wearing, are called Vyshyvankas, which are like Ukrainian and Belarusian like national dress. Like they're white. They've got like embroidery with runes and flowers. And it again, like this is perfect for an American audience because Americans don't know shit about European culture at all.
Also, like
I didn't know that until I started looking into it.
But the Sami are also like predominantly located in Norway and then Sweden.
Lapland, yeah.
Well, but it includes Ukraine as well.
Oh,
So I mean, there is some overlapping.
I thought Ukraine was more like Central Europe.
I'm talking about like where the generations of these people are currently living.
Okay.
And have traditionally lived. But yes, I mean, it is northern Scandinavia, Lapland.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, because and then this movie was actually shot in Hungary, not in Scandinavia at all, which doesn't matter. But again, speaks to the American audience. Couldn't tell Sweden from Hungary. I couldn't. Looked like Sweden to me. But you get these shots of the Harga and like the idyllicness, the flutes, bucolic, Aryan utopia, overhead camera, racist banner, murderous ethno-state commune. Like those are my notes because that's what this is. And with their dress, especially with the kind of blue embroidery on a lot of the men, they kind of look like porcelain figurines a little bit, like something you'd see in a curio cabinet. Like everything is so, I don't know, it's storybook, and that's why like the Wes Anderson comparison I feel is apt, not just at the very beginning but throughout this film.
I mean, it is so clearly a folk fairy tale. I mean, look, we've gotten up to this point, so let's cover some things. Well, you have a young woman who is experiencing incredible tragedy. She's orphaned. She becomes a stranger in a strange land, a somewhat mythical and fantastic land that. Would you say this land exists outside of the space-time continuum?
I mean, I think that's arguable. Yes. No, it doesn't, but it does in a way in that, like, all of this is fantastical. Like, a lot of the stuff that happens in this movie is mythical, like, in the sort of the source material, especially the particular scene that we'll get into in depth later. But I feel like when they step through that entranceway of the sunburst and they enter this weird sunlit utopia where, it gets dark for a few hours, Everybody is in white. Everybody looks the same. Everybody's happy and smiling. Like, yeah, it is kind of like a weird space-time bubble, like the sort of pocket dimension that
Right.
they exist in.
Mhm.
And so she goes down the rabbit hole or through the looking glass or whatever you want to say, and spoiler alert, but we'll get into it. She becomes the queen. She gets what she perceives to be her wants.
Well, she's kind of given it, but yeah.
In the beginning, you mentioned the painting in her apartment of what kind of tells a story. It's a young woman kissing a bear. It's a little girl kissing a bear, and that she's wearing a crown. That young woman is wearing a crown, and this is actually a very popular Finnish fairy tale as well. And this is an illustration. You can buy that painting at IKEA. Maybe we'll put the link in our YouTube comments.
Hashtag IKEA.
Yeah, you can actually buy that. You can buy that painting. It's like a pretty well-known painting. I have some information on it. It's a painting called Stakkars Lilla Base, which translates to Poor Little Bear, and it was done by a very famous artist named John Bauer, and he's illustrated many of the Finnish and Swedish fairy tale books and stuff.
Yeah, it's like kind of like a Hans Christian Andersen.
Yeah, he's like a well-known artist, and like his art, including this photo or this painting, is readily available and widely recognized throughout Lapland. And we'll get into the bear iconography later, but the young girl is sitting there. She's wearing a crown, and ultimately, we know Dani will become the May Queen, and we'll touch on that. But it's such a fairy tale.
I also, reading some of the Swedish reviewers of this film, this is the equivalent of like a Swedish director making a weird horror film about Thanksgiving and then inventing all these sort of rituals and tropes, like that there's like a turkey cult and that people dance around like a what do you call it? A football goal, essentially, like the two uprights. Like it's that level. That's why it was so absurdist in Sweden, because a lot of it has flavors of Swedish culture, but are totally turned on their heads or completely nonsensical.
I would love to watch that movie, by the way.
Well,
I was thinking the same thing, yeah.
Sounds so good.
Does it?
Yeah, hell yeah. You know that's the type of shit that I seek out, and you shouldn't be shocked that I like this film, because it is more of a, sure, but for the sake of the pod, come on, roll with the punches.
Oh yeah, I can't believe you hate this. You don't hate this film, Michael. It's ridiculous. Like, this is a garbage nonsense dramedy, and like it's not horror at all. God damn it, get with the picture.
But you know me, this film more than anything is an experience, and I love that in film. And earlier I was like, it's a better film. I don't want to say that it's a better film than Hereditary, but to me it was much more of an experience. And that I chase that, whether it's the fucking genesis of like silent cinema or that garbage fucking Titan Palme d'Or indie fart smell bullshit.
You did not like that.
No, but I enjoyed that. I saw the experience of it, and that
Could have fooled me.
I chased that from like Buñuel to fucking Herzog and Jodorowsky to Lynch.
Okay.
Like anybody who's going to subject me to some wildest, absurdist bullshit, like I will pay money to see that, even if I hate it, even if I don't think I'll like it. I would rather watch that than fucking Transformers 5.
Well, okay, I get that. And also, I agree with you, like, no matter what the media is, if an artist has polarizing views, like, especially, I hated this, I love this, I want to see whatever it is. I want to hear whatever it is, because I want to see what it's about. I want to see what all the, the buzz is about. Yeah. But serious question, while you're watching this film, taking your notes, did you pause it at any point?
I didn't, but this was my fourth or fifth viewing.
Okay.
So I pretty much knew what was going on.
Michael?
This is okay. So the way that I take my notes for these, I don't pause anything and I don't write anything down while I'm watching it. I let that shit breathe.
Not even to smell your farts?
I want it to be. Actually, ironically, there was one thing that I thought I might forget and I didn't want to forget, so I wrote it down really quick on my phone, but I didn't pause, and it just said windshield inversion scene. And we already touched on that. But typically, I try to remove all screens other than the one that I'm watching, and I just push play, and I sit down, and I try to immerse myself as much as possible. And before I write down anything, I usually give it an hour, if not a full night. and I go back and try to piece together what stood out to me. And once I have that skeleton, then I'll begin to read some reviews and watch some interviews and kind of take some notes on what the director had in mind. And that's honestly how my notes come about. I don't pause and interject my emotion into my viewing, other than actually taking it in my eyes and developing my emotion in the moment.
Okay. Good answer.
Thanks, Dad.
I wish I hadn't paused this one so much, but probably the first hour or so, it was maybe once or twice, quick notes. And then as it got further along and the tempo picks up, I had more opinions because of, again, like seeing this as a different kind of film and seeing it for the second time. And I wish I hadn't. I wish I had just watched it and then gone back and taken notes, but it's already done. So, because I feel like I lost a lot of the steam, but there's there's things that, oh man, just the performances, especially Civ, like her whole demeanor is amazingly funny to me. Like, especially the hand gestures that she does when she's talking to people, like when she's explaining the suicide that happens later on to the London couple. She's like doing like hand gestures and stuff, and I was tickled. Like, it was just kind of too much.
But I think that speaks again to kind of like why this movie works. Like, that's a very American response, and I think that it's the response that's being conveyed by many members of the trip. Certainly the two Londoners. What is it, Connie and Simon? They're a myth. They're not buying this shit for a second.
They're the only ones that react realistically.
No.
Which,
no.
Yes.
No. Danny is completely intrigued. And she is acting, in my assessment of this, she is reacting to this like somebody who's experienced an extreme trauma and loss and complete loss of self and sense of relation to where she belongs in the world. And for the first time, she's hearing something that's not being told to her because of her circumstance and not being told to her to fix her problem, but that she is hearing through the ears of somebody who has a problem to fix. And this is just landing. That doesn't make it right. That doesn't make it wrong, but it does make it a perfect prey for a cult, which is what the fuck this is. And you compound it with the love bombing and everything else that's going on behind the scenes. And she heard that message at the perfect place at the perfect time, and she is completely enamored. She is focused solely on this explanation. She is not scared. She is not rejecting. She is not judgmental. She's simply figuring out if she believes that or not.
Well, she does try to leave, and then is further manipulated by Pele into staying. She packs up.
That was more of a result of like Connie and Simon, though, right?
Maybe, but like, again, like I feel like that's part of it. Like, the whole conversation that Christian has with her about this is hysterical in the dialogue. Him talking about how this is normal for them, and we put our...
we just got to acclimate a little bit.
Dude, exactly. I literally was like, it's like spicy food or high altitude. You just got to acclimate that they kill themselves. Like, it's totally cool. Why are you freaking out?
I agree with him in some part. Like, so at the very beginning... You say Connie and Simon get killed for no reason, but then you just talked about how they had to them, like, the craziest, most obnoxious reaction to this. Like, it was very clear to the Harga that their reaction to that, they were like, we have to take care of these people because they are going to cause trouble. Yeah,
we got to kill them quick.
So that's why when you were like, they got killed for no reason, like, I think that is the reason, which, I mean, I wouldn't have reacted like that, not because like I'm a badass, more so because I'm like, okay, I'm surrounded by I'm way outnumbered. I'm going to, kind of blend.
I don't speak this language. I'm far away from trains, planes, automobiles. Nobody really knows where I'm at.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of what their group, I mean, they don't say anything like that, but they have to kind of be thinking, be like, all right, there's 4 of us. There's, I don't know, 100
an unsustainable number of people for the small community, yes.
Maybe acquiesce is more appropriate than acclimate.
Well, but it's the words he uses and his demeanor in which he says it, and on top of that, Josh and Pele know exactly what's going to happen and warn nobody, which is so fucked up from Josh's point of view because he knows what what Danny's been going through, and then refuses to let on and let them go and see two people kill themselves. It's insane.
I think Josh tells Christian too, like off camera, because I never would have thought that, but watching it a couple times when you go back, they give each other these a couple glances like right before and like during that. Like even when Josh is refusing to tell them, like she looks at Christian and he does like try to Google it, which is like why it's confusing because he goes to Google it and he doesn't have service.
That was a good scene.
But then when it shows them like they're coming out and Josh and Christian look at each other and I kind of like give this look that they're like, oh yeah, like it's gonna happen.
So that's even worse because now Christian's involved in hiding this from them.
I could be wrong, but
they're two anthropology postgrads. Like they're trying to protect the experience, and I'm not saying that makes it right or wrong. What I'm saying is like it.
But they didn't tell her, and on top of that, like they act like it's nothing because they don't even wake up Mark. That's like another hilarious line. You guys didn't wake me up. You let me oversleep.
Oh yeah.
But Josh knows it's going to go down, and he knows Danny's going to freak the fuck out because right before it happens, he sidesteps away from her and gets close to Pele to get away from her episode she's about to have when she sees two people kill themselves.
So if you haven't seen this movie, you might not be lost a little bit wondering what we're talking about. And honestly, if you haven't seen this movie, this is going to be a hard podcast to follow.
Do not listen to it.
But
yeah, we're definitely assuming you guys have seen this.
We're definitely talking about the Atstupa here.
Atstupa.
And this is kind of based in the realistic or real lore. It is kind of discredited as something that maybe was more metaphorical or mistranslated and not actually something that occurred.
Yeah, you probably...
I've got a lot on this.
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, from what I read is, like, does it exist in, like, old writings? Yes, but, like, most serious historians say that it was only written about by the Icelandic people who just wanted to portray the Swedes in a barbaric way because they converted to Christianity 100 years later than they did.
Right.
Or some shit like that. So, like, yeah, Ari Aster took it from real writings and stuff, but yeah, from what I looked into it,
this goes back to the
every real historian would be like, yeah, they didn't actually fucking
do
this.
This is the Turkey King and dancing on the football field.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, they're painting them in a bad light.
If there was
for religious reasons,
13th century writing about a Turkey King, kind of from Britain, being like, oh, these disgusting Americans.
So the Atstupa is just basically a precipice where ritualistic cenocide occurs, which is the suicide of somebody who views themselves as no longer being able to either contribute to the community or sustain themselves due to old age or weakness or some sort of other invalidity. But
well, unless you're an oracle.
Well, the oracle provides service to the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll get into it.
Well, I mean, by their own definition, it's not up for our interpretation.
No,
really.
It very much is, actually, and I'll get into it.
Can't wait. Anyway, so the Atstupa is just like this precipice where in this community where they view a life cycle as like the cycle of the seasons, and they break that down, first 18 years, so on and so forth, up to the 72nd year.
Yeah, it's all the number 9. Did you guys catch that?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get into it later.
And the question that one of, I think it's Danny, actually asks, what happens at 72? And Pele just says, you know.
Comes off as a joke at the time.
So they kill themselves, and it's a ritual that the entire community participates in realistically. And one morning there is 2 people set to die. They have a big ceremonial breakfast. The 2 that are going to the Atstupa to jump are in ceremonial gowns. The rest of the community follows their leads on when it's appropriate to eat, sit, stand, talk.
All these awesome things. Chants.
Yeah, I mean it's a very ceremonial type of affair, and only at this point Josh and perhaps Christian know what's going to happen amongst the outsiders. They march out to the precipice. The 2 go up top. They do some bloodletting on their hands, wipe their blood on some rune.
Stele.
Yeah. And then they jump off onto a rock in front of the crowd of people below and kill themselves. One successfully. The second one kind of misses the rock, snaps his fucking legs.
It's pretty funny, actually, right?
This is the first oh fuck moment.
And we're an hour in
at the festival, and this is the first gore that we get. I mean, we do have the murder-suicide, but in terms of gore, which I want to just briefly describe that because it does come up in other ways. So Danny's sister has the cars running in the garage and uses hoses to tape them up to the exhaust, runs them through the house, tapes one under the parent's door, tapes the other one to her mouth. And yeah, when her body is shown, her eyes are open. There's puke all over her. It's shocking. It's brutal, but it's not bloody. So this is our first blood in the film, and it is awesome. The lady goes first. Like you said, she does a great job.
She's a natural.
Lands right on her face.
I think that was her first time doing it too.
Well, is that?
No. I think she had practice. That form was impeccable.
We'll
Straight
look
to
into it.
face.
But
I
yeah,
think it was her first time.
There's like a stone dais kind of built up that they're.
It almost looks
hard
like they're
stone.
supposed to aim for it.
They
yeah.
definitely are, and one of them did, and the other one didn't.
Yeah, the most
I think
beautiful
the other one
man.
aimed for it and missed.
The
His leg caught it.
The most beautiful man in the world misses. So he is a big Swedish actor. I think were you the one that brought this up?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Then I just wrote about it all on my own. He was in I don't even remember if it was a movie or a show in Sweden, but it was, or I can't, most of them are Hungarian actually, it might have been that. But he was very famous, and he was known as the most beautiful boy in the world. He's like a child actor, and now he's known as the most beautiful man in the world. So
Sounds like a Flight of the Conchords song.
But but
No.
yeah, if he misses the rock.
He misses, and before any of this happens, they kind of like pan through the crowd of
Yes.
the Harga people, and one of them has a very large wooden mallet that's like, I mean, the haft had to have been 7.5 feet long, and a big like wooden malice that's attached to it.
This
Which
thing
this
weighed
is a real
150 pounds.
thing too. I mean, as much as Atastupa is a real thing, this was an instrument used. He saw one in like a museum or something, and crafted it to look after that. But
It looks like something that you would use to like beat jute or like hemp then to make rope out of, but it doesn't matter.
This is like a druid's
thinking
two-handed
All of
weapon.
this
This is like a
stuff is
D12
fantastical.
I was
weapon.
It's
thinking
not
of-
a D12.
I was thinking
It's
of the
maybe
thing
a D8.
that you use at like a carnival that hit that bell and it shoots the
Yeah,
thing up.
yeah, the strongman
Those huge
competition.
mallets.
You got to get a good like leverage, and he's a large, imposing man. And this is another part I thought was really funny, because not only does Grandpa miss, and you hear his leg snap, and then you see the gore, which is shocking and graphic. But you turn to the audience, and I do mean audience, because they are kind of like.
Spectators. They're definitely spectators.
Well, but they're kind of like a live audience in a comedy show where you'd like turn and like see everybody laugh, but instead of laughing, they're screaming
They're
and gnashing their
groaning,
teeth and
yeah.
everything.
Yeah. See, now I agree with you, but I think Ari Aster probably agrees with you, because he has said that he wanted there to be a good amount of comedy in this.
It's very funny.
But to me, he didn't abandon the spine, like what you were initially saying. And to me, this, coupled with some of the later scenes in this movie, are so important, because the language of the Harga is empathy.
It's Swedish, but yeah.
It is empathy, and their shared experiences and shared grieving, shared celebratory emotion is critical to Danny's acceptance. And I think that this is the first time we see it, but all the way up to the film, and I was talking about this, like, she has no support system. She has no friend group. She has no family anymore. Her relationship is, while maybe not be like physically abusive, it is certainly like toxic.
Emotionally abusive.
Maybe not in the most traditional senses that we see portrayed in horror, but it is unhealthy. And when she's grieving the loss of her family, she gets no real support, like you said, from her boyfriend and her friends. And except Pele reaches out, and even just a sentence brought her to the brink of a breakdown. But later on in the movie, we see this type of reaction again when Danny's crying. And it is so fucking cathartic for her to have that group of women share her grief. And I think that honestly is one of the final nails in the coffin to her completely flipping. And we'll get to there because there's a lot going up to it.
There is.
But this scene where this man flails down and just is dying but not dead, and he's groaning and he's in pain, and the entire community, audience, whatever you want to call it, starts wailing and groaning in pain as well to mimic him until he's ultimately put out of his misery by a mallet man is, man, it's really important to the story, I think. But I bet it was born out of comedy. Knowing Ari Aster.
It is, and
I do know Ari. Ari, if you're listening, give me a call this weekend. What up, bud?
Yeah, we
What
know
up,
you're
Ari?
an Omer. Hashtag Ari Aster. No, I don't think you're wrong, and I think it is very important to the film in every scene that's shown. But specifically this one feels not only is it empathetic, but it is just as performative. Like it's used as a way to pull Danny specifically more into the cult. And I say this because when this dude is screaming in agony and dying and everyone else is, doing the interpretive dance and being empathetic, those guys are not running up there. They are marching slowly with pomp and ceremony. And yeah, they are being empathetic and they are screaming, gnash their teeth, but no one else is like got their fucking legs splintered and like bleeding out on the fucking, ground. So it is, but a lot of what they do is crafted in a way of how it looks and like how they're presenting themselves as a community. And I've got a lot about the Oracle as well. I fucking hate Ruben so much. Oh my God. Like I'm getting angry thinking about it. Like, and when I first saw this film, I didn't like him very much. But on a second watch through, I really hate him. And I know that there's a lot of stuff that was cut from this film, not only from the director's cut, but even before the director's cut was made. Like, this film initially was over 3.5 hours long before they did any editing to it. So I know that there's a lot of stuff that Aster had planned to kind of just show them like living in the commune that didn't directly relate to the progression of the plot or with Danny's sort of journey. But fuck, do I hate Ruben so much. He is I wouldn't call him an invalid because we're not in the 70s, but he's a puppet that's used as a way to justify whoever the current elders are in order to impose their will on the rest of the people. Like any other kind of theocratic society, like they use this sort of symbol as a way to justify their divinity or their mandate or whatever, when realistically all he's doing is finger painting, and then these guys interpret his writings. It's no different than if they were sacrificing animals and reading the entrails. Like it's whatever the elders actually want, whether it's conscious or not, is what's driving the community and what's their lore and everything else. And everything else is just window dressing.
Sounds like religion.
Yeah. I mean, it is. But the idea that they like, oh no, we only inbreed to like create oracles.
Is there something wrong with that?
Well,
I thought Bill and I were going to create an oracle tonight, but it turns out we're not related.
No, it's unfortunate.
Damn, you would have thunk.
Yeah.
I guess also neither one of us can give birth, which I hadn't really got that far. I was kind of hung up on
that you guys aren't brothers?
the deed. Yeah, I was all about that hog until I found out it was non-fraternal.
Oh, we'll get to the hog talk later.
But there's hog talk in this movie.
He gets his head smashed by like 3 different people, right?
Yes, hammer smash face.
And
dude, are you Cannibal Corpse fan? I would think that you wouldn't be.
Not right now, but it is like one of the bands that
you think it'd be cool to get into.
One of the first like heavy bands that I listen to that I attribute to why I like heavy music today.
Okay.
Same as shit as like Slipknot.
No, formative years.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Corpse Grinder, if you're listening, what up?
I don't know who any of these bands are. I don't care. They finished the Adustupa, which again is like, it was a 13th century Icelandic saga, the Gottark saga that takes place. The saga is written about Gotland, Sweden. So, like you said earlier, Bill, like it's literally a bunch of Christians like making fun of the savage pagans because Sweden took so much longer to Christianize.
Yeah.
But that word Adustupa, or the Icelandic equivalent, which I'll definitely butcher, only exists in that saga specifically. And there are instances of Sinnicide and Geronticide like in other communities over time. Like I think there's actually a region of India where it's not widespread, but it exists enough that the government has like an official stance on it. So it's not totally like fabricated, but it never existed in Sweden. Like that never happened. Yeah. But it was popular enough like through the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries that a lot of cliffs have that name. They have like the Atastupa name, like you'd call like Mount whatever, essentially.
Yeah, I saw like a list on Wikipedia, full disclosure, but there's like 8 or 9 different prominents that have Atastupa in the title in Lapland. So I mean, it's definitely a thing.
Yeah. And a quick little aside, apparently that word is used as like a colloquialism in modern Sweden as a way of describing
a failing government support system,
a failing healthcare
security
system for retirees, which is hilarious to me.
Funny.
But enough about the Atastupa. They start leaving, and Christian's basically like, hey, Danny, you got this? You cool? Cool. I'm going to hang out with the
Alright,
boys. Bye.
But I mean, yeah, it is important to note again that the couple from London, Simon and Connie, have the strongest reaction to this.
They're like vegans at a slaughterhouse.
They're literally running around and shaking
Or
people.
people seeing a ritualistic suicide.
No.
They're shaking people that are watching and saying, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
They try to stop the grandpa from jumping. Like, don't,
yeah, they're
don't,
screaming
don't
at
jump.
him, "Don't jump!"
Completely disrespectful of tradition. I'm
mean,
not even being funny here.
No,
like, they are in somebody else's house.
It's like it feels like the equivalent of like you would go to Japan and go to a nice restaurant and like take a bite of sushi and be like, "Ugh," and spit it back out on your plate in front of everybody. You know what I mean?
I mean, like, I get what you're saying, but it's not anything like that at all. Like,
it's exactly like that.
It's not anything.
They disrespected their culture.
It'd be like if you went to Japan
killed.
and they're like, oh, yeah, this is human meat. Oh, my God, you spit it out? What the fuck's wrong with you?
You shouldn't have sat at the table.
Shouldn't have been tricked into going to the table in the first place.
I mean,
that's their fault, too.
I guess you would probably disagree with this, but you could argue that they knew what they were getting themselves into, which
Not at all.
If it was described to them, it probably wasn't accurate, but I can't remember the guy's name that brings them over, but he says multiple times, he's like, I told you about this. I'm sorry you didn't like get it or understand.
Total bullshit gaslighting, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But again, like imagine that you guys were visiting a foreign country and an insular community, and they were like, "Hey, we have this big festival."
Mistake one.
What? Like, are you not going to ask what it's about? And would you be mad if you saw like mutilation or self-harm or something?
See mistakes 1 and 2.
Okay.
I wouldn't be mad. I'd be intrigued.
I am not even trying to be a contrarian or just like pump up like my own self-belief, but like I think that I would try to take that stance first, even if it was difficult, because we've already said, dude, I'm not going to some insular community and just expecting shit to be okay.
Well, if Pele was like, "Hey, baby, I really like that you're coming," I mean, I'd go.
He's a handsome guy.
He's cute, yeah.
Feel home.
And then also, yeah, I'm definitely asking questions. And if I'm unsure about something, I'm not attending. And if I have gotten that far, I'm speaking for myself, and I want that to be apparent. But I would view that as my own consent. And at that point, then I have to wrestle with that internally. And it might be something that I regret, but it's hard to say. I've never been put in this situation, and I care not to elaborate on it more out of fear of insensitivities, but I would try my best to understand first.
Okay.
Which is what most of them do, or at least pretend to do.
Everyone's high on hallucinogens for most of this trip.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
I mean, again, like more cult shit. Like, let's feed you drugs to like keep you like in disoriented mode.
I love this aspect of the film. Okay, so like, again, we're gonna put Hereditary against Midsommar quite a bit just because of its obvious parallels. But if there's one thing that I love more than like Satan and demonic summoning, it's cults. I am absolutely fascinated by cults.
You were a Branch Davidian for a few years, right?
No, Rajneesh. It was
the Bhagwan. Yeah.
I actually almost named a cat Bhagwan.
My uncle actually was a Rajneeshi.
No, he wasn't.
Yes, he was.
Fascinating. Is he still alive?
Yes, he's still alive.
My gosh, I
Can
don't
he
have
be a
time.
guest on the next pod?
I don't think so. Also, Uncle Harita, if you're listening to this, shout out.
Shout out.
He took that name because his birth name is Robert. And anytime that we'd get together and I'd be like, "Hey, Grandpa, where's Harita?" He's like, "Well, I don't know, but Bobby's over there."
One of my best friends growing up, so I grew up in Oregon and pretty close with...
Not a lot of sneeze guards.
Pretty close with a lot of like hippie communes, actually. A lot of my friends are from communes, and a lot of people I lived with in college and stuff kind of come from that background. And my good friend, Onpeo, shout out Onpeo, his father, who was very, very much like extremist hippie, had this dog who was named Osho. And I've always wanted to ask, and I never did. And his father had passed away, and I don't know. I've never breached that, but like I have a strong suspicion that my like very very dear friend's family was also in the Rajneesh cult.
Oh, most definitely, and I'll tell you why. Because my uncle and my aunt, my uncle was married when he went to India, and then was not married when he left. But my uncle and aunt, they left the cult before the cult relocated to the United States, and before there's the Wild Country
Wild
document,
Country.
yeah, on Netflix, which goes into
Fascinating
like
watching.
them moving and starting the commune, and also them trying to basically use germ warfare to install their own puppets in the local government, and we get into that later. But once the Bhagwan was deported from the United States, he went back to India and rebranded himself as Osho.
Well, absolutely. That's why I'm
And
bringing that up.
before I lived here, I lived in Texas, and I ran a small beer and wine store, like a tiny little place, and it was owned by a family of Gujarat, North Indians. Their father, Praveen, rest in peace, the man's dead, was a devotee of Osho and had a couple books on Osho as well, and like would go to an ashram like once a year and spend a couple weeks there with a community of basically Rajneeshis. So it pervades my life in so much that I know.
Damn it, that is so fascinating, and I honestly we gotta move on from it because I can't wait to talk about.
We're already running along.
But anyway, these drug trips, when they first arrive, not even to the community, but in like the satellite community where they meet
Just
up.
in a field.
The camping field.
Yeah, where they meet up with the Londoners and Pele's brother.
Ingmar.
Yeah, and they start their trip. Man, this movie, and I remember seeing it in the theater and being like, oh, fuck. This movie, to me, has hands down the absolute best, most accurate portrayal of a hallucinogenic trip. This is not your 60s post-reefer madness, I love you, Alice B. Toklas, Peter Sellers, fucking wild, boop, 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 like type of trip. And it's not some fever dream, fear and loathing bullshit performance either. This is I love the way that all of nature is moving in symbiosis and breathing. Mm-hmm. I think there's a big theme of succumbing to nature and the natural state, and I think that Danny is the vehicle that portrays that, and I think that her looking at the grass growing through her hand and later her feet becoming grass and things like this are telling the story that ultimately ends up being the conclusion of this, but also just the way, like the emotion and how everything reacts to the emotion of the character in which you're participating in the trip on, whether it's Mark and like, hey, not only people, will you lay the fuck down? Like, this is just so accurate. The way
they were laughing at me. No, they were just laughing.
Yo, but dude, the way that everybody looks at you, even when they're not looking at you, but it's clear that everybody's attention is stopped and focused on you, and the paranoia and the schizophrenia paranoia dynamic here that's being talked about in like just the mental health narrative of this whole film. Mm-hmm. This is brilliant. And the first time they trip, it's like very clear, and it's a choice, and they eat a bag of mushrooms together, and it's like almost ceremonial. But like all the other subsequent trips in the movie, while they might be implied and while they talk about making the tea early on, you kind of forget because it's just take this drink and we're at dinner or whatever. And then like later in the movie, further down in the scene, you see like the dresses and the crowns and the fish and the feast all moving and breathing, and like you forgot that you partaked in taking of the ritualistic drug. And fuck, that is so good because like you're always blurring the lines between reality and the fantastical. And I think that the Hagra, what is it? Harga exists in a plane that simultaneous to both realities, but firmly planted in neither, and I don't think that's an accident. I love the psychedelica in this movie. It's so accurate.
Also,
good.
All the Harga are like basically experienced psychonauts because it's part of their like religious ceremonies and practices, and not only the hallucination, but just the mind space that the Americans are and the Westerners are basically in is suggestible, and it keeps them. They keep feeding them drugs, and no one's forcing down their throat. No one's injecting people with stuff, and stuff might be hidden in some of the food. But most of the time, they offer stuff to them like, "Well, what is it?" It's like, "Oh, it just helps you out. It lowers your defenses and
I
that
mean,
kind
they're
of
being
thing.
truthful but vague.
But vague, and also they are lying by omission by not telling people exactly what's going on. But they keep them suggestible, and that's why they're able to kind of manipulate Danny and Christian and everybody else even further. But after all this happens, you get the scene where Josh and Christian have a confrontation, and Christian basically tells him that he's stealing his thesis idea, right? Like they have this conversation, and he's like, "Yeah, I just wanted to tell you so it wouldn't be weird, and we can collaborate." And the guy's being a total fucking dick, and Josh calls him out on it. Very, very. He's like, "Yeah, it's kind of what does he say? It's kind of outrageously unsubtle that you're being this bold." And this scene in particular, Josh's dialogue to me is the audience talking to Ari Aster about how this is a comedy. And that I think is reading too much into it. I don't think that's really what's happening. But let me just read you some of the dialogue real quick, because he's talking to Christian. He's like, I know, I'm sorry.
No, okay.
He's like, I can't tell if you're joking. You knew I was going to want to do this. Like, I can't tell that you're joking. I wanted a horror movie. What am I watching? You don't think I know what you're doing? It's kind of outrageously unsubtle that you're being this bold. I'm honestly kind of impressed. Fuck you. I found your own passion. This is not some glorified hobby that I'm dipping into. And it feels like a hardcore horror fan reacting to the comedy and the absurdity of this and like, fuck you, Aster. Like, where's Hereditary 2? Like, what is this? What is this shit that I'm watching?
I love that dissection of that, honestly. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's poignant to
point.
me, and I think that exactly is why I love this movie so much. It is not even as advertised, but it certainly wasn't what I was expecting, and I love the polarity of opinion on it, and I still, like, there's so many themes in here that I'm drawn to naturally from, like, the gore and trauma and cult aspects of it, that all of the over-stylization of the art and the community and the psychedelic trips. I mean, this movie was made for me. I love it. I
And
really do.
William Jackson Harper as Josh, I love him. He's also known for being, Cheaty in The Good Place, which is a comedy, another comedy actor, big surprise. And when they finish this confrontation, he feels like he's being cheaty. Like, I'm almost expecting him to say, "I have a stomachache," like right after that, because he's just like head in his hands, like looking down, like just kind of blown away at Christian's like shittiness and how open he is about it, I guess. But I just wanted to gush about that scene. And then Mark gets mad that he like slept with the suicides. Again, like all his dialogue is sitcom. It's great. I love it. He's
I mean,
such
he
a
has.
dick.
I mean, I think his best line is when they first trip, and that guy walks by and he looks at him and just goes, "Oh fuck, it's a new person."
I don't want new people. Ugh. Well, that and him like he pisses on the tree, which is like I think another scene, the ancestral
tree,
tree, where they, oh man, this too. Like when they cut from like Danny and Pele talking, and Danny being manipulated into staying because she's packing up, and him being like, "I've always felt held. I've always had home here, even though I was an orphan." And like, does Christian feel like that to you? Do you feel held? Do you feel like you're at home? And
Very good scene.
My parents died in a fire. I understand.
dude, exactly. And him like again like love bombing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And trying to empathize with her, and he is in a way, but it's calculated.
That again is it's calculated, but it's also why it's so effective, because like if you
You
have to identify your potential victims, and that is how you are able to abuse them in perpetuity and exploit their insecurities, and that's what makes people prime for the plucking for cults. And like Danny was just at a point in her life where she was perfect for this, and it's because of the genuine compassion that she's perceiving, and that may or may not exist, because you have to remind yourself that Pele and all the members of this community are also indoctrinated. This is what they believe.
They literally like send him out into the world to go collect strangers.
That's the most unbelievable part about this movie is that this guy will get through a fucking like this close to a postgrad in fucking anthropology simply to bring back 4 people.
But it's basically like it's a mixture of what happens in The Wicker Man. I know what happens in the remake with Nick Cage, where they basically send women out to capture men in order to bait them to coming back.
Oh, that's classic cult 101.
They need to be willing.
Fishing.
They need to be willing participants, right? You can't like or you can trick them, but they need to come on their own volition.
It's like a witch.
It is. It is very much like a witch.
And it is sorcery. It's witchcraft.
And ultimately, it's it's a good thing that it works on Danny, right? It's a good thing that she doesn't try to leave, because if she actually really tried to leave, she probably would have ended up like the other 2 people that really tried to leave.
They would have killed her.
Connie and Simon.
But it goes from that to like throwing the grandparents on the barbecue, which made me laugh out loud. Like just watching that quick cut from that scene of them like, coming together and empathizing, and then you hear they're like on rollers and you see their smashed faces roll up and then onto the barbecue. It again, like so much of this is there's definitely horrifying things, the tragedy at the very beginning, like a lot of this I can't find the humor in, but so much more of this is like this is such a like pitch black comedy. I don't know. But you see them burn up, and then they collect the ashes, put it in the ancestral tree, and then Will Poulter goes over to like take a piss. Which again, like, dude, there's like trees all around the place. Why are you gonna go for the one big one that's down
without any
like
coverage,
within
maximum exposure?
Yeah, they're like
the community.
They're like
people
20 yards
around.
away, right? And then that dude is pissed, and he's like, "You're disgusting, dick," and like all that, having a conniption fit.
Mad.
And then the whole rest of the time that Poulter's on screen is basically him being glared at. It's like, is that dude gonna kill me? Such a good line. Yes,
because after the Ada Stupa, it turns up pretty quick. We get Simon and Connie being gone, and of course they have these very calculated reasons that they hear them kind of gossiping about it, and they're like, "Oh, if I may interject." And
by the way, well, dude. Fucking Stin being like, oh no, and he's trying to use like broken English as a way to sort of bridge the divide of like why this doesn't make sense. And Connie's not buying it at all. She's like, no, he would have told me. What do you mean there's only one seat? Like that's ridiculous.
And he's like, oh, we abide by safety laws.
Safety laws. He's like, I could have sat his life. Like, well, you could have. Well, you could have, but no, you can't. Don't worry about it.
We're a completely autocratic like commune that has their own laws and enforces their own system of justice. But if there's one thing we respect, it's
road safety. Yes, it's very important. Also, it's only 30 minutes, so don't worry about it. Don't worry that he would never told you that he left early. That's ridiculous. Calm down, Connie. And you do hear later when Mark is like looking at the temple and kind of looking at I don't know what her name is.
I don't remember.
The redhead that's
Inga?
Pele's. Yeah, I think it is Inga, Pele's sister.
Mm-hmm.
You hear a scream.
Mara is the one that Maya gets Christian.
The redhead. But the girl that's after
we
Poulter.
see at least 3 or 4 of the main characters that shown what they're doing at the time, as you hear Connie screaming off in the distance. But I guess it's just like not quite loud enough, or they're all so into whatever they're doing at that moment, or they're just fucking high that no one really does anything. Like, they don't talk about it.
Honestly,
they never be like, I heard
Connie
screaming.
You can miss it as a viewer.
I definitely
I didn't hear it. I was wondering when they got her, and now you've cleared that up.
I definitely probably miss it the first time, because I feel like the second time I watched it, I was like, oh, you can hear, and then that's part of seeing it in a theater. People were giggling, talking whatever.
You're absorbing everything the first time.
That too, yeah. So, so I did enjoy that, actually, that they all heard her, but. Yeah, whatever. They might have been too high, or Mark was trying to get laid.
Well, Danny and Christian have their own little internal struggle going on. Everybody's distracted.
Danny's the only one who notices both of them are gone and questions it, and then you get somebody from the community leaning over, like, well, let me tell you what actually happened. Don't worry about it. Beyond that,
and they all accept it immediately, except for Danny looks puzzled, but Christian's like, oh, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Stop being a fucking wet blanket, Danny.
And she goes, I can see you doing that.
Exactly. This is super important too, because Christian doesn't refute that. He doesn't even.
He says, "What is that supposed to mean?"
Dude, he's so dismissive. Again, it's the coldness and lack of community that Danny has throughout this movie that makes her inclusion in the end and that smile all the more, I don't want to say justified, but I'm going to say justified. Like, just that shared emotional embrace, the catharsis, the acceptance, the longing to have what she is perceived to have lost forever. It makes so much sense, and those sweet, sweet flames burning are representative of her leaving behind and destroying a world that she never quite fit in or felt right in. And I think that we'll get to that, but fuck, this scene right here, that's just a little quick question that she turns and poses to Christian, holds so much weight on this second viewing of mine that I might have missed the first time.
Yeah, it's definitely a great line. And I'm likely said at this point, everyone, and I mean, by the end of it, you have to think, oh, it was definitely on purpose that everyone's kind of purposely separated from each other. So there'd be like, at points, they'd be like, oh, Danny, you are helping the women today. And and
Classic
she'll help.
cult tactic again.
Yeah, she'll help them cook. And this is when they start kind of just getting picked off. And so Josh is really interested in the, oh God, what is it called? The Ruby Rotter.
Yeah, the Ruby Rotter.
Which is the
holy book.
Yeah, that your favorite character gets to write.
Yeah, Reuben. Yeah.
So we do get a cool scene of Josh in the temple and the sides of that building. If you guys notice, this has like hundreds of those books. I love the architecture in this movie. It's very cool. And Josh says to him, "Oh, this is great. Can I take a picture?" And he closes the book and he's like, no, absolutely not. So Josh decides to be a bad boy, and he escapes in the middle of the night and goes to that temple and is looking at the book. And what happened?
Yeah, no, that you see through the glass reflection somebody coming through the back, not the back, the only door, while he's in there. But and then he gets clubbed basically by Reuben wearing someone's skin.
So, no, it's not.
It is.
It's not.
Who is it?
Ari Aster says it's actually Pele is the one that kills Josh.
He's doing a really
but
good
we
Reuben
do
impression.
we do see Reuben like sleeping in the corner or whatever of the thing,
right, yeah.
And he does freak out. We hear him yelling and stuff.
I thought that was coming from the killer.
It sounds like that. This is what I thought. I would never have thought differently until apparently people were like kind of unsure, which there was probably more footage of this that had to be cut out.
There's a lot of stuff from Reuben that was cut out.
Yeah, but Ari Aster had to be like, oh no, it's actually Pele that kills Josh.
Okay.
Which I think is interesting because that's the first and pretty much only, if I'm correct, instance of Pele doing any of the harming to them.
I think it's the only on-screen kill, really, unless you count the suicides. Like everyone else is killed off-screen.
Off-screen, yeah. And we do see another figure in there that looks like Mark, but it's not.
It's not. It's Mark's skin stretched over in a very like face-off kind of style where it's all connective with still the cartilage and stuff.
Yeah, because Mark leaves the feast earlier when he's thinking that the gentlemen are just staring at him are going to kill him. And what's her name? Inga?
Inga's like, hey, you want some fuck? Come visit.
Pretty much.
She's going to show
me. She's going to show me. She's going to show me the thing.
Yeah.
And he leaves, but he doesn't have the consent or approval of the community to mate, which is something that we jumped over like the panels because, I mean, we're running long and we're going to get it all in. But, yeah, he breaks tradition, and that's kind of the justification within the community for his extermination, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys think that Reuben's character design is a callback to Toxic Avenger?
Well, they're
Absolutely.
actually watching Toxic Avenger in this. No,
they're watching Austin Powers.
No.
I did love that.
I watched Slither last night, and that's a little Easter egg. They watch Toxic Avenger, Class of Nukem High in that for a second. And I was going to say that character is kind of inspired by Toxie, but I don't know if this is inspired by Toxie. Reuben's character, that is.
Looks
maybe.
more like The Hills Have Eyes, or
also that very much so.
Kind of like. I mean, it looks. I mean, we find out that he's a product of inbreeding, but he looks more like
Well, they've
a
kept
product of like Chernobyl
radiation.
Yeah.
No, he does, and like again, they've kept their bloodlines clean for 1,000 years, or whatever their Aryan nonsense is, and he looks like he either has, and I'm not trying to be offensive, but I will be offensive. He looks like he either has way too many or way too few chromosomes. Like he is very physically deformed, and I think they refer to him as being unclouded, is how they sort
by
of
outside judgment.
justify him being an oracle and finger painting in that book.
I mean, he can't speak.
He might be able to, but he's never shown in the movie. I know, again, a lot of the stuff that they cut was with Ruben, and they also cut a scene where Connie dies. There was a scene for that where they're like at a lake and are trying to drown a child, and she like tries to go in and save him, and they kill her instead. But I think that might be on the director's cut. But
I gotta watch that at some point. Not
that
anytime soon, just because this movie is a lot to digest. And I'm not saying it's unenjoyable, but it's just I can't imagine sitting down with a 3-hour version of this movie tomorrow. It's just a lot. I need to let this motherfucker breathe.
That's fair.
Oh, dang, Simon left? Jeez, shucks. That sucks.
I'm sure he'll be back to get you.
Yeah.
Or whatever we told you before. I don't remember.
Love that line. But yeah, they described the Ruby Road. No, that's Chris Tucker's character in Fifth Element. They discussed it as emotional sheet music, which is a kind of cool idea. But again, at the end of the day, it's finger painting that the elders then interpret. But Josh is killed by Pele in wearing someone else's skin. And then really the only people that are left are Christian and Danny.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the actual Midsommar festival, 'cause it's like a 9-day festival, is like now it's coming up. Like the maypole's going up. They're making meat tarts.
Yep.
Yeah,
meat pies.
And something we skipped over, but you see this in the panel that they show, the wovenness, which is extremely graphic.
Oh, it's awesome.
And they pan it slowly so you can't miss it. That Maya, who is nice. Maya, who is the redhead who's after Christian and who's Pele's sister and is 15, has been carving a love rune and then leaves it under his bed, and like all this stuff that's foreshadowed in these paintings or panels is coming true,
including her casting the spell on Christian by including her pubic hair in a meat pie that's ultimately fed to him, and then also menstruating into some sort of tincture drink that is going to be used as like a love potion,
which no one notices is a very different shade than everyone else's, which bothers me.
It's easy to not notice if you're watching the movie, but I feel like if you're sitting there with the glass, like it would be
two people on either side of you, like being like, "Hey, yours is like pink. Why is that?"
It does seem kind of silly that they don't notice, but I mean, you could argue that they had a lot going. They had a lot going on. They had a lot in their mind.
Also, high as fuck. Maybe it's the same exact color.
Yeah, or they're all colors. Yeah, all the colors. I do like the callback when Civ invites him. Like they're like, Christian, please report to the principal's office. Christian, please report to the principal's office. And he's like, I think I ate some of her pubic hair. And she's like, yeah, you probably did. Like she's just like,
about right.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think that's exactly what she says. Yeah, that sounds right.
At that point, he's already drank the potion. Like he's too far gone, and he's isolated. Like it's past the point of no return. These people are unabashed.
He gets to impregnate a 15-year-old. He's totally gonna do that because he's a scumbag.
We'll get into it.
He did.
Yes, he did.
He did.
Yeah, so Ruben is a puppet Dalai Lama finger painter, and
pretty much.
Christian and Danny are because she hasn't won the May Queen.
No, because she's still making meat tarts, and then she gets adorned with her crown, and she is like not the actual crown that she'll get at the end of the movie, but she has like the flower crown that all the other women have, and she starts to abandon her like traditional Western dress. Like she is now she's
wearing the Vivashenka.
Exactly,
and I mean I think it's definitely no secret that they offered or gave her these garments and nobody else, right? So because I mean it would show that
everyone else is dead.
Well, no, but no. She starts wearing this dress when there's at least a couple of them still alive, and I mean, it feels like just another instance of them welcoming her to the community, but nobody else.
Agreed.
Well, and she's beginning to feel that sense of inclusion because, like, if you think about the way that she participated in the previous like drug rituals, She was like reluctant and wasn't emotionally prepared for it. But after they get done making the meat tarts and they put on the dress and they're getting ready to go dance around the maypole, which is how they determine this year's May Queen. She has the opportunity to drink a tea, which she's pretty positive has hallucinogens in it. She asks, and it's explained to her, more lies by omission and whatever. But she takes it willingly and happily. Is she with Maya at this point? Who is she with?
She's with Ula.
She's with Ula, yeah.
Who's,
Maya, it does participate in the
dancing?
in the May Queen whatever competition,
The
but
maypole.
Yeah, but
I don't
she's
think
taken
they
a
ever-
liking to.
Well, Maya like falls down, one of the first women to fall down.
Not an
Yeah.
accident because she
and
has
then
to
is like
disappear.
giving him eyes and being
Mhm.
like, hey, just
Yep.
so you know, I'm into that. But no, Ula is the girl who's like giving Danny the drink, and it's like, oh, you look her in the eye and drink it down in one, and it's a good scene. It's another thing taken from myth where the Swedes would dance until they died around the maypole. And weirdly, the maypole is like not only phallic but also looks like a cross, despite them being like a pre-Christian pagan community. I don't know. It
I
felt
don't
weird.
remember what it looks like, to be honest, but
It
It's
looks,
got like the circle.
yeah, it looks like a cross with
right.
two like balls on either side of it, basically.
Yeah. This is the first time, Danny is letting go of her inhibitions. It's the first time she begins to enjoy herself at any point in this movie. It's like, I believe shortly after this is the first time you see her smile. And she's a little out of rhythm and offbeat and self-conscious at first, but ultimately, like, the drugs start to take over and she starts to feel more at home and more accepted within the community while she is dancing around this maypole with her, we'll just call it what it is, her new sisters. And she is, she's embracing this. And while this is happening, like you said, Maya falls down because basically they have to dance around the maypole, and the last one standing is this year's May Queen. And Maya falls down early, starts making the googly eyes with Christian, and they run off into the A-frame nearby.
It's a little later. They're at the table when he leaves.
Christian?
Yeah.
yeah.
Is he?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, but
Well, I wasn't the one who stopped the momentum to bring it up, so apparently it does matter. But anyways,
does matter.
so they go ahead then, take it over.
No, I didn't want to make you feel bad.
Oh, well, that's exactly what you did.
Sorry.
I love you.
It was calculated.
I love you. Say it back.
And anyway, after the maypole dancing scene, they invite the jazz hands. The fucking jazz hands. Can we talk about the jazz hands?
Sure, we got
Sure.
nothing but time.
Okay, we do, and so do you, Elmers. All of the times that they don't clap, they just shake their hands in the air. Like, oh my god, it's ridiculous. It's so funny to me. They finish. She's crowned as May Queen. There's like a big pomp. They give her more garland. She's not in the entire dress yet, but
that's true.
they're basically everyone is coming up to her like, oh, everyone's fucking googly eyed and
This is important.
This is like a love bomb if there ever was a love bomb. And she sees her mom walk past her in the crowd, her dead ass mom, and they're finally like, you are now one of us, kind of like,
And
you have now joined. You've done the ceremony. We love you. We're accepting.
I mean, Pele kisses her.
That's right. He does full mouth kiss her as
Yeah.
well, and he's been a sneaky Pete the whole movie,
Hand on thigh and just being
giving
he's
her
holding
a
her.
handmade
He's being her home.
a handmade birthday gift when he fucking knows that Christian forgot.
Mhm.
All this shit, dude. He's a piece of work.
But also, when we're talking about the flashback with her mother, we kind of glossed over. I don't even think we mentioned it actually, but there is another dream state type of flashback. It's one of the only scenes of the movie
the ambient
that's
dream?
dark. Yes, where she wakes up in the middle of the night, and it's the middle of the night because it's dark out. Although it wouldn't be dark out if she wasn't dreaming.
Right.
And so she leaves their little communal home where they're all sleeping in, and this Christian is in a separate bed next to her, which is where Maya puts the rune under and everything. But she notices that she's the only one in the room, and that's dark out. And then she walks outside, and she sees a car's headlights, which is completely out of place at this point in the movie, even though they took a car there. But the car wouldn't be driving through the middle of the village. And the car's headlights come up, and you see all of her friends leaving her behind. And you see Mark's shitty fucking grin in the
Oh
back.
my
And
God.
you know
He's-
how her and Mark's dynamic is not good. They are not. It's very much the boyfriend's best friend and the boyfriend's girlfriend, right?
Well,
Yeah.
They're
the
competing
the
for
girlfriend
affection.
that should have not been a girlfriend anymore and is dragging everybody down when they're supposed to have a fun boys' weekend or week or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
And like he's wearing that on his face. He's even mocking her and laughing at her when
Yeah.
she turns away. And as the car pulls away, you get this huge black cloud of exhaust that comes and washes over her, and she begins to open up her mouth to scream, and no sound comes out, and it's just a flood of the same exhaust, kind of representation of choking to death, asphyxiation, obviously loss, abandonment, the same that she experienced at home in the beginning of the movie. So she's already had a couple non-drug induced hallucinatory, like traumatic flashbacks, and then this is the second one, and we're getting closer to the climax, and so it is also doubling down on that whole loss and grief and alienation type of narrative that I think is central to Danny's character up to this point.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And to jump back to kind of like after she's crowned as May Queen, they invite Christian to visit Civ's, principal's office. And before that, they give him spring water, which is essentially like GHB and Viagra, right?
Lucky.
Seems like it.
It seems like it. And he goes and sits in, and her house too, because she does have an actual, like, her own home where everyone else that's under 30, everyone that's from an infant to 35 lives in a communal home. Molestation Nation! Holy shit, that's fucked. Like, I don't care how whatever your situation is, like, bad things happen in that home. But they get to, he gets to Civ's house, and all the interior, the entire wallpaper, everything is more foreshadowing. There's a bear on fire that he's staring at. And I'm sure many more Easter eggs if I had paused and like really took time to glean over everything in that sitting room. Very close sitting together. And she basically lays it out. She's like, hey, you've been approved. You're like a complete astrological match, aka you're very white and you have red hair, so we've chosen you to impregnate this 15-year-old. You down? And he doesn't give an answer, but you can understand that, like, yeah, he is.
Fair enough. And yeah, so after when she is crowned a May Queen, and they bring her to this huge table where pretty much everybody's at, and they bring her a fish, and this is, her face quickly changes from being happy to they're holding this fish and she has to swallow it in one try, and you almost get an idea that it's going to turn into some huge thing, and it kind of, she pops it in her mouth a little bit and spits it out, and they all laugh, and they have a great time. I don't know why that was in there really. It's like a little gag. It's kind of weird, but
Pickled herring is central to the diet of the Laplanders.
Yeah, but
it's
I mean,
I think it was just more of an Ari Aster Easter egg, like,
yeah.
oh, look at, and like we also eat mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving. You know what I mean? I think it was just like
yeah.
kind of one of those things.
Well, it's like it's a joke on like The Foreigner, right? It's like, oh yeah,
Right.
we all do this.
Yeah, take
Hey,
it in one
aw.
And there is that peer pressure, social pressure for her to do it. And then
Yeah.
I do get the sense that it was never close to being like an issue. They wanted her to feel that way, so that when she had the natural reaction, which is to reject it, they could all laugh. And
we
it was like
we
it's a
we
communal
accept
hazing.
you. You haven't like
Yeah.
done anything
Right.
wrong.
Right.
And then it's just like with the grandma and grandpa, like they take all their cues from Danny, like when she sits down, when she
picks up
her fork and knife, when she finally starts cutting into her food, and then it's like a cascade down the table,
which is
which
great.
is very
Those shots
beautiful
are so
to watch.
cool, yeah.
And the table's like set up in a specific Futhark rune as well. I don't remember which one, but like it is a Futhark rune if you look at the overhead.
It's I don't know the name of it, but it is the symbol of rebirth, actually.
The like arrow, and she also has it on her dress, her
Well,
blouse.
she has two. She has two on her dress. She's the only character in the film that has two, and one of them signals loss and death, and the other one signals rebirth.
Okay, I thought it was like Gaijin and Swedish or whatever, but
and then we finally get Christian comes up to the table, like and he just looks so out of place. He's still in his plain clothes, and
He's late.
he looks physically ill at this point. He kind of has his hands on his stomach. He's leaning forward. I mean, this could be for a number of reasons. It almost never seems like they have enough to eat or want what they're eating, and I mean, he's being fed drugs the whole time. He
They're
probably doesn't
forward
know what
like
day it
8
is.
time zones. The sun
Right.
never sets. These
Yeah.
like they're completely disoriented, and he and Danny are high as fuck during this.
Yeah,
They
everything
exchange-
is breathing.
They do exchange a look when they just kind of, look at each other, and you can tell they're both just thinking, like, what the fuck is going on right now?
So good.
And
then-
now, traditionally, the May Queen blesses the harvest, and
Yeah, and
he
then-
can't come with you.
Yeah, then Danny gets whisked away in a little carriage where they're running. I love this part when they run
with
next
their
to it with
hands
their
out.
arms out,
Yeah,
like
and the
directing
torches.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
And they're going off and doing these ceremonies, which is, I mean, they're burying pieces of meat and
It's
like
fertility ceremony.
Yeah.
For
It's
both crops and for
meat,
humans.
grain, and an egg, I think, and then bury it over, and then they have her like repeat the Swedish phrases.
Mhm.
And while this is going on, everybody else is still at the tables, and there's like a flower girl laying out a path of petals for Christian to then go into the mating hut.
Yeah, and I mean, he has no option at this point, right? Like, I mean, you said earlier, like, oh, he gets to impregnate a 15-year-old girl, and he's down. But I very much get the sense that, like, he looks around and he sees this path of flowers that they've had, and he kind of looks around and he's like, fuck, like, what are they going to do to me if I don't do this?
I mean,
like, he gets up and he kind of slinks away. Like, he does not look like he's looking forward to it, even though he knows what's happening.
he's about to be raped.
Yeah, pretty much.
No, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
that. It's exactly
He's
that.
definitely raped.
And then, yeah, from that, this is maybe one of the scenes that makes this movie so polarizing, because it's so strange that. I mean, and did you see this in theaters the first time?
Absolutely.
There's some
Mixed
laughs.
reactions.
I think I laughed when they first, not through the whole thing, but when they first show the women
It's a lot.
naked, swaying back and forth and
Yeah.
singing.
Ari Aster's actual comments on this is that this was supposed to provide prolonged comic relief for the film.
It's the whole film was comedy, so yes.
But yeah, like you said, she's what's it? Maya is laying on a little bed of flowers in the nude, and there's, I don't know how many women, but I have to guess probably 9.
Yeah.
9 fully nude women behind them, kind of hand in hand swaying.
It's like a chorus line, kind of,
Yeah.
but they're not doing the can. Yeah. It is. It
Yeah.
very much is.
I was thinking more like line infantry. Like
Line infantry, or also kind of like the end of When the Grinch Stole Christmas, where all the Who's in Whoville come together and sing
Mighty
holding hands.
Doors.
I wrote that Dahu Doris, Dahu Doris. It's right there. Whoville Xmas song.
What is that?
Whoville Xmas song?
What is? We'll get into it.
Oh, Dory. It's that one.
You don't know The Grinch Who Stole Christmas? Oh, I forgot that you refuse
you
to acknowledge
stole
that Christmas
Christmas.
exists and that you block out any mention of it.
What?
See, that's what I'm talking about. Elmers, you guys might not know this, but Michael
Is a
is
Satanist.
vehemently.
Hates Christmas.
No, he's just an anti-Christian. I wouldn't really call you a Satanist so much as that you hate everything about Christianity.
Ding, ding, ding.
So anyway, during this very unusual sex scene, we are getting some cuts back and forth to what Danny's doing out in the field. And my opinion on this is, I think the cuts just needed to be quicker. We see so much of the unusual activity going on for such long periods of time. I think if it cut quicker back and forth and we got smaller, like shorter segments of the sex scene, I think it would have been way more unsettling and more disturbing. But we see it for such long periods of time that it's kind of silly. And I mean, obviously that is not like a bad thing if it's a comedy, but it's not like laugh out loud.
It is. This scene is laugh out loud.
Okay,
When
fair
when the woman comes up to like kind of console Maya,
and
and she's like singing into his
Okay.
face and is
Okay.
holding her hand, like that is hilarious.
That part is pretty funny because it
And
like
then-
kind of
No,
scares him.
I
He's like,
disagree.
whoa.
Then Grandma comes up and starts pushing his butt. Like
I disagree.
It's
It makes
hysterical.
the longer that goes on, the more uncomfortable I become as a viewer, myself
a
personally.
lot of comedy is uncomfortable.
Sure, but I think that it's a double-edged sword that has both effects, and with with acuteness, I don't think it was an accident. While it is funny, and fuck me, Ari Aster said this is a comedy scene. I also do think that it is disturbing, and like you can see that in Christian's face. Like he's
Yeah.
never comfortable during this, obviously. But again, this is another one of those scenes that's establishing the language of the community as empathy. Like they are sharing her orgasmic pleasure. They are
Yeah.
moaning in unison. Like everyone,
Which is also pretty funny.
I mean, kind of funny unless you're in Christian's shoes, or rather in Maya's 15-year-old vagina. It has got to be terrifying.
Well, but it is, but she's also like, this is something that's expected of her. It's more of an obligation, like not to take away what's actually happening to her. You know, it's a strange man, and the whole community around her is expecting and, you know, watching this happen. But she's like so happy. She just wants to be over too, because immediately she starts rocking back and forth to like, you know, get the semen like into her
like
womb
the
and everything.
old Maud Lebowski sitting there.
Yeah.
Also,
it increases the chances of conception.
It does, but
Exactly.
small issue here. If she wanted to be as like fertile as possible, and she just menstruated into the glass, like she's not. Like it should be like 2 weeks later. That's more of a biology issue than anything.
But also, if I remember correctly, when we see that art that leads to that, the girl in the painting, she has like a pair of scissors or like a knife.
She's cut her
like,
pubes.
Yeah, everybody thinks that's so graphic. She's trimming the hedges.
Well, I kind of thinking, I mean, she could have cut off, you know, a little something, make some blood too.
What, like
instead of being menstruating.
No, it's definitely menstrual blood.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like showing her over a glass. Like,
okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Also, I love the panel where it's just a dude with hypnotized eyes. It's hilarious to me. It's just hilarious.
He's in love.
It's so funny.
All of the art, like inside of the communal home and the panels and wovenry and all that shit, is so fucking cool. I love the art in this film. Incredibly ambitious set design, costume design, art direction, and that's a highlight of this film for me, and I think for most people, and it's very polarizing within the horror community specifically, which is at release largely who went and saw this. Like, people hate it. I think this film is not unapologetically pretentious and self-serving, and to me, that's I'm not ashamed to say that that's one of my biggest attractions to this film.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's exactly why you're attracted to this film.
100%.
No, I also like. I think a lot of this, because I know I'm coming at this like this is a comedy. It is a horror movie too, but I think a lot of this is Aster in a very flawless way putting these two things together, and also making you question, like, am I allowed to laugh at this? Like, is this funny enough, or is this, in a sense, is a scene that should be funny even if it's kind of a comical depiction?
Right. Sweet Bill says this all the time, that one of his most admired effects of film is to completely discomfort the viewer and to put them in a state where they don't know how to feel about something, and that it's very difficult. It's funny to be funny, and it's horrific to be horrific, and those things are primal and almost easy if you prey on it appropriately, and masters of art know how to do it. Even rubes like us know how to do that. But to create a sensation that is so strange and foreign and conflicting, even internally, not like when you view it by yourself, you don't know if you're supposed to laugh or if you're supposed to be grossed out or if you're supposed to be scared. That is admirable feat, and I know that that's
Absolutely.
something that you
I love
talk about all
feeling
the time.
uncomfortable. Yeah. So, definitely hit the nail on the head there too. Which I didn't laugh in the theater. I don't think I do. I mean, when she comes up and starts singing right in his face, I think when I watched it yesterday, I giggled a little bit. But if I was watching this movie on my own, I definitely don't think I would have laughed at all. But yeah, let's keep this going because I love what happens next, right? Christian, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying when he gets up and runs out and it's kind of like he finally like kind of came to and like knows what happened. Get it? And he is like, he's just so ashamed and he's fully nude. He's sprinting around.
No, his penis is flopping around.
Which is so great for many reasons, because there's not enough hogs in horror. Hashtag horror hogs.
Horror hogs.
We talk about this all the time.
We talk about this a lot.
But another reason why it's so great is because it was Jack Rayner's idea. He talks about one movie in particular, The Last House on the Left, and just saying that so many horror movies in the past, it always has the women being sexually assaulted and the ones that are feeling, you know that word with an H that I can't say, humiliated. Help me out.
Humiliated. Well, being humiliated and vulnerable and
exposed.
abused and exposed,
Yeah.
and then finally, like, you're towards the end where final girl or death, whatever, where you're naked and totally
Right.
defenseless.
And Jack was like, hey, there's not enough of males feeling that in horror. Like, can I do that? And of course, Ari Aster, I'm sure, was like, absolutely.
Please show your cock on screen. Please.
Yeah.
Understandable. Real quick, though, while this is all happening and we're flashing back and forth between the fertility scene,
Right.
Danny does hear some chanting, and obviously it's like the coven or whatever you want to call it, like the fucking infantry line in the mating shack, just wailing and sensation and shared pleasure. And she was very much allowed to go investigate, even though she's like mildly discouraged.
No.
I don't think you should do that.
That's not for you.
They pull that carriage up within earshot of the mating shack on purpose. And again, they don't want to force her. They want to get her to make her own choice
Succumb
to
to
then
her
do it, even though they're
inquisitive nature.
manipulating
Exactly.
him.
Yeah. Make her feel like
They're
she's
like,
in
oh,
charge.
that's not for us. And she's like, no, where's Christian? He's fucking that 15-year-old.
Yeah. But then, of course, the one that says, you know, that's not for us, whatever, doesn't actually
No
try
one
to
stops
stop her when
she's May Queen.
when
she wants.
she goes and looks through the keyhole, and this
Sees
is
it.
when I know you love this part, so you can get into it, but this is when she is so sickened by what she sees and upset that she kind of just drops down to her knees and is crying and screaming.
She gets physically ill first.
Yeah.
And she vomits just barely a step away from the shack, and the whole sorry if this is crass, but the like harem of Hagar come up to her. Harga come up to her and kind of like whoosh her away into the communal home.
That little scene where they whoosh her away, it looks like a ballet. It looks like something out of Swan Lake where all of the dancers come
Surround
and
her.
are in unison,
Yeah, I know what you
stepping
mean.
lightly into the other room to then, again, love bomb and manipulate her into being like, we're here for you. We
It is
feel
in unison
you.
on purpose. I'm almost positive of it because this is the culmination of that shared empathy. Like, they want her to break down completely. Everything has been calculated up to this point, as we talked about, from like the drugs, the daylight, the time zones, the like sequestering of her from her friends, the manipulation of her boyfriend, her being allowed to view the mating ritual between Christian and Maya. Everything has happened for a specific reason. It all leads to the end of this film, but right now we are at the major crisis and turning point of Danny. And so when they do whoosh her away, it's all in unison, it's all poetic, it's all very poised and calculated, and they take her back to the house, and she is encouraged to let down like all of her inhibition and all of her emotional shielding, and to finally just be completely embracing her vulnerability. And like in the beginning of the movie, after you find out that Terry has killed herself and her family, you see Christian sitting on the couch with her, and her head is in her lap or his lap, and he's just sitting there cold and calculated, and you know, he's just playing the role of a boyfriend who is not really acting like a boyfriend. He's just like, oh, and like
He's not even saying anything.
no, he's just holding her hand or her hair or whatever, getting through the moment because he's obligated. And in this point, when we're back in the house now with the group of women at the commune, she is crying out in the same hysterical fashion that she was in the beginning of the movie, but rather being met with a cold, emotionless, feckless, bullshit fucking response. She is validated completely by the community, who is sharing this pain with her, much like they were sharing the pleasure Maya had in the mating shack, you know, the unison chants. And
the hive mind.
Yeah, but well, it's not hive mind, it's hive emotion. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little different. And I know, like, you can say, but I think that is the point. Like, she, for the first time, has now, like, embraced this pain. And, like, she is letting out so much more than the pain of losing Christian to this 15-year-old when she is already checked out of this herself. Like, she didn't, in the very beginning of the movie, she felt like maybe this wasn't going to work out. But now she is sitting there thinking that not only have we lost Christian, but I'm in a strange place. I'm a stranger. I've lost my family. I don't know who I want to be. I think that my friends have been murdered. I'm fucking just letting it all go. And, you know, they're all there sharing that emotion with her. And she finally gets it. She still has a couple more walls to break down, but she's committed, I think.
Yep.
No,
And,
she's almost totally insane at this point.
and because
She's been fucking brainwashed.
Yeah.
She's been psycho
Yeah, it's part
assaulted
of
and
it.
love bombed.
And then at this point too, while she's having the shared emotion, Christian is like running around with holding his dick and balls,
Literally.
and is running to like any building he can find, and that's when you get the montage of like all of the bodies essentially. Like you see Simon, who is in the chicken coop, when he goes in the chicken coop, and he has again another fucking ahistorical mythical sort of thing, the blood eagle sacrifice, with his eyes being replaced by sunflowers, and not 100% medically accurate, because you can't breathe through your lungs if the diaphragm doesn't exist to pull them and expand them. So they look like, I know.
Not all movies can be 100% medically accurate, like
Yeah, well,
some.
this isn't
some.
Human Centipede. What are you expecting?
But I do love that part. I mean, Simon's lungs are pulled out the back of his
Back.
skeleton like wings,
They like
and you
chop
can,
all his ribs out and basically pull them up like wings. Yeah.
They like
fucking awesome.
suspend him with like by his flesh and organs in this chicken coop. It's such a good
So
scene.
cool.
Which is
So-
a callback to another saga where the British king of Northumbria, King Aella, was or murdered in this way, basically, for being corrupt. But again, never happened.
Yeah, there's only like 2 instances where this had ever been recorded, and they were both like betraying like royalty, but
It says like carved. I think one of them is like pretty vague, where it's like, and an eagle was carved on his back, and one of them is like, and they chopped his ribs out, and then pulled his his lungs out and stuff. But it's
not written in English.
it's a handful of mentions in some narrative sagas written by the Scandinavians.
Many historians also suggest that this is probably not accurate.
No.
And like
It's definitely Christians being like, look at these horrible pagans, look what they do to us.
Exactly. And you get I believe it's probably Josh's foot sticking up out of like the garden.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we do
And
see
he's
that
got a
just
rune
before.
carved on it.
Hilarious.
Yeah, that's a little silly. And yeah, so it's clear to both it's clear to both Christian and Danny what's happening now. They just have both very different reactions to it, and that's justified because they're on different sides of the fence here too.
Yeah, and then at this point, fucking Christian gets a handful of scopolamine blown in his face and falls over, paralyzed. And I love this scene where they close his eyelids one by one, and then they open them back up one by one. She's like, "You can't talk, you can't move." Cool, hilarious.
I also love the way that Pele's face is just barely shown peering through the doorway as it's ajar, while the other 2 members of the community are drugging him and getting ready to take him away.
But yeah, so yeah, like Rob said, he gets this whatever blown in his face that knocks him out, and he's woken up. He's completely paralyzed in like a wheelchair, and we see Danny, who is elevated before him on like a stage, and she has this flower gown on that is just
Amazing.
extravagant, which of course throughout the movie she's becoming more and more like with the ground through her trips. We see multiple times of grass growing through her hands and her feet. When she trips, she sees the flowers breathing, and now at this last scene she is finally just completely engulfed with flowers.
This is like Texas high school homecoming where she has the mum to end all mums, and she's all you see is her face. Everything else is completely covered in this like prom dress kind of thing and the big crown.
It's huge.
And it's breathing, like all the flowers are breathing with her. And again, they let her find Christian so that she would then pick him as the final sacrifice, right?
Yeah, so this is when I can't remember what the woman's name is, but
Siv?
she kind of is explaining what's going on. Be like, oh, the 4 sacrifices. They have 2 volunteers, which are Ulf and Ingebar, if I remember correctly. And then they have this cool little like. Oh fuck! I can't remember the name.
It's a lottery.
Now, but yeah, like the lottery.
But yeah, it's like a rollerball
machine
thing with
things.
runes carved in it, which is a callback to an older film I think that Aster used for inspiration, but I don't remember the name of it. It might have been Black Narcissus, but there's like 3 that he kind of took inspiration from. But also in the audience, you see Grandma and Grandpa as like stick people. which
Yeah.
is also pretty funny to me. Like just the way that they're done up. Which
Wait, so is that them? Because
Well,
they're burned.
they're burned and their faces were smashed, but I think these are carvings essentially of their heads, or maybe
They're like
just
representations.
representative of a woman and a
Right.
man. But yeah, they have like branches out of their arms and stuff.
Which
Yeah,
I
they're
thought
like
was-
scarecrows.
which
They're
I
like definitely not the bodies. They're
Right.
like
Yeah, well, but I mean, we still we see Mark, who kind of has his like skin stretched over
he's a
as
scarecrow.
a scarecrow as well. So, but yeah, so they draw someone's name out of that machine, Torbjorn, and I guess it's not really like outlined very well, but I guess Danny kind of gets to decide who's the ninth sacrifice between the guy that was just called and
well, it's also
Christian,
9 again.
Four-
which is to make it
Yeah.
9.
4 outsiders, 4 willing participants from the community, and then the final one's chosen by the May Queen.
Yeah, which Danny doesn't say anything. She kind of looks at Christian and doesn't turn away. She's kind of like staring at him and like tears up a little bit. And they're like, "All right." She picks Christian.
All her facial expressions from the point you see her in the flower dress onward is like she's completely gone. Like, I mean, not in a sort of like she knows what's going on, but
She
like
looks very out of it.
she's had a complete mental break.
Right.
And so yeah, they pick Christian, and then there's a really cool bear scene, which is like weirdly informative, where they're like, "Yeah, don't nick the intestines. There you go. Let's just like that, Sonny."
You
Yeah,
big
they-
fan of bear scenes?
I do like me a good hairy bear scene. Yeah, especially when they get in there deep, in
and
the
Christian
intestines.
and Christian gets in there deep.
He does. Well,
They need stitches.
I love too at the very beginning of the movie where they're showing like we're just gonna ignore the bear. It's like, yeah, it's a bear.
Yeah, he goes,
and
"It's a
then
bear."
totally move past that. Like,
Yeah, just on the outskirts of Halga, there's just a bear in a cage that's like barely bigger than itself, just chilling.
Barely.
Barely
a bear that's big enough
bigger.
for fucking 6'4" Christian to be fit inside of.
It's like 5'10".
Is he?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
But yeah, he's still paralyzed, can still see, and is like moving his eyes around. And I did see him move his eyebrows a little bit, but that you're not perfect.
Yeah.
They didn't actually give him tetrodotoxin or whatever to like paralyze him.
Should have. That'd been
They
tight.
probably
It's
should
so
have.
fucking cool.
They should have given them all real drugs.
I'm
But
sure they did that on their own time to research.
probably I would have in
I'm
Hungary.
sure they definitely did.
I
but-
think that's illegal in Budapest. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they probably did it there.
but
Anyway.
They sew him up, they get him in the bear costume, and then you see a shot of everybody going towards the yellow temple that no one's allowed to go inside, which is full of hay, and everyone's coming with a wheelbarrow from like the cardinal directions, and I believe that Pele is got Mark's like stuffed body with the jester hat and the jingly bells.
They have them in wheelbarrows.
Well,
Yeah,
Skin the Fool.
Skin the Fool. Yeah,
the game they're playing.
Mm-hmm.
And inside, Ulf and Ingmar are there, and they're given dew
Tree.
from the yew tree.
Yeah.
Feel no pain, feel no fear, which turns out to be bullshit.
Shocker.
And they basically put everybody in like a section of the hay-filled temple, and then some ceremonial guards wearing these kind of weird, like tassel.
Which are so fucking awesome.
They do look really
I think
cool.
they look really creepy. They kind of have these
It's so
things
cool.
that sit above their head, and like you
It's called
said,
a
yeah,
hat.
just. What the fuck is that? A hat?
It's a hat. It looks like a triangular fez that they're kind of wearing.
No, you know
with,
what I
like,
mean. It's
fringe and tassel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hat, Bill.
If anybody is
never mind, you
familiar
don't know
with
what I'm talking about.
Orville Peck, who's an outstanding
Yes. Oh my
musician,
God.
I love
Orville
Orville Peck. Oh
Not
my
only does
God.
he have an amazing voice, he's gorgeous.
but it's kind of like the Orville Peck.
Yeah.
With the face mask.
It
and the
is
tassels.
just
I love
less
it.
sexy and
I don't know. I was. We'll get to it.
yeah. Get to it. Tell us how sexy it was.
Ritualistic group suicide, mass indoctrination, cult play, and rebirth is something
I'm into-
that gets
You mean Coldplay?
me there. Yeah, Chris Martin.
yeah.
Chris Martin had a feature in this film. Did you know that?
Yeah, he played the
cameo.
bear.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, the guys in not hats and the tasseled fringe masks get all the bodies and the two willing participants, and then Christian is kind of the central figure in the bear suit of sorts, and then they light the fucker on fire.
Yeah.
And you can see his eyes darting around in the temple, and he's freaking the fuck out internally. And then you see Ingmar and Ulf kind of like lovingly looking at each other, and then Ulf goes up in flames and is screaming
in
bloody
agony.
murder.
Mhm.
And that's when they kind of go back to the audience, the Harga, and they're all doing again the
Sharing
shared
his
emotion,
pain.
right? The cumulative.
It's like a purging like ceremony as well, though. I feel like
Right.
they are shaking away and like it's like exercising the past. And I think Danny's character portrays this really well because like she's almost catatonic in the beginning stages of this, and then she's quite overwhelmed with grief, and she's even like crying, and that quickly turns into just a sense of overwhelming relief and again acceptance in the community. And she has a family, just like we heard Pele say earlier, is like my family died in a fire.
My parents did,
We
yeah.
know what fire that was, and my parents died in a fire, but I got to have a family that accepted me immediately, and I was embraced and held in my home in a community of love, which is something that you never got to experience. He's prepping her for
Yep.
this moment, and she realizes it, or perhaps she doesn't, and she just accepts it subconsciously. But that is, to me, exactly what happens in this moment.
No, yeah, I think you're right.
And the building falls down,
That's
and
great.
right when the building completely succumbs to the fire is when that frown turns upside down.
Yeah, into a crazed Joker-like smile because she is totally gone.
She's finally happy. She's finally home.
Well, I don't know if she's happy or home, but she has a family and a home now.
And she's succumbed to nature, right? Like, I mean, that's a theme here with the
Yeah.
flower and everything. And, like, this is the natural progression of life in terms of say the word, Harga. But in the Harga, I mean, in the community, and, like, once she has accepted that, now she is one of them. Gooble gobble, right?
Gooble
Like,
gobble. Oh, yeah.
she's definitely one of them now.
Also, him being in a bear costume, being burned alive by a cult, that is straight up the Wicker Man with fucking
Nick Cage.
Oh, yeah.
Cage.
Very much so.
It's great. And then Civ mentions, like, before they pick him, basically, when she's in the flower costume, that just as Harga gives, Harga takes. So for every bountiful year, they offer a life, of the nine that are killed.
Yeah.
And then the film ends.
Yeah, we get her smile, and then that's credits.
And then did you guys
Beautiful credit scene.
Did you guys
Yeah.
get the song that they play in the credits? It's a Frankie Valli song, which again adds to the comedy of this film. And it's "The Sun Ain't Gonna Shine Anymore." And it's just such a
Makes sense.
I love Frankie Valli.
I do
Amazing
too.
voice.
I like Frankie Valli.
But that sort of juxtaposed with what you just saw in the last 5 minutes of the film. Again, so many genres crossing. Wow. What a great film.
Really, you enjoyed it. Like, I know you said that it was enjoyable, but like, how do you feel about it as a film? Because when I was rewatching this, and Sweet Bill and I had some conversations about this.
You guys talk without me?
Occasionally, we talk without him. I'm sure you guys have lunch without me all the time. But
Live
anyway,
closer.
I
He lives so much
Lives
closer to
so
you than
much-
I do.
Literally equidistant from the two of us.
but anyway, so this is Bill's pick, and he is unabashed fan of Hereditary, and I kind of thought he was going to pick Hereditary when we were doing like the theme of the modern classic or whatever. I kind of accidentally fell in our lap, and I think we were both a little bit surprised that he picked Midsommar. And some of the reasons that you gave was that maybe you'll like it a little bit more on the second viewing. And I know that you guys saw it together in theaters, and you said you were kind of misled by your expectations, or that you didn't necessarily love the film after your first viewing. And the whole time I was watching this, I was thinking, fart smell cinema, Rob fucking hates this. This is way more style over substance. He's going to rip into me for my infatuation with Florence Pugh, who, oh my God, I tried so hard because we would have added an hour not to gush about her. But we
She's amazing.
just came off of another amazing performance, and I couldn't stop raving about the collaboration between Eggers and ATJ. But put that to tenfold, okay? Because Florence in this movie was outstanding. This is the pinnacle of horror performance in the last 10 years to me. I loved her. And you can hate Danny, but to dismiss what Florence did for this movie would be criminal.
Hating
Give me that look.
hating-
Don't do that.
hating Danny in a sense is a nod to Florence Pugh because she
Absolutely.
played that character so well.
No.
So,
Christian was the weakest. What's
Jack Rayner.
Jack Rayner? I think was the weakest in this. There was times where he was just a little bit flat, but also, I mean, that's kind of
That's
like
his
his character
character,
too.
man.
Like,
Yeah.
he's the feckless, emotionless, like out of touch, obligated boyfriend.
I had a note, and I don't remember what dialogue he had just spat out, but it's basically like, I can't tell if Jack Rayner is a bad actor or he's playing a really good role as a shitty human being who has no empathy,
Yeah,
and it's the latter. Because this dude's
Yeah.
like a legit actor. And not only that, he's a cinephile, and apparently him and Aster had kind of nerded out together because he had watched a bunch of Aster's shorts before he had accepted the role as Christian. And he had noticed a lot of like nods to weird, obscure cinema that he was a fan of.
That's awesome.
In Aster's earlier work and his like short films. But he was in Macbeth. He was born in Longmont, but if you'd watched any of like interviews, he's Irish.
He's Irish,
he grew
yeah.
up in like, I don't know which county, but he grew up there. His mother is Irish, and he's like a classically trained actor. And I think that he plays a kind of a heel so well. And I didn't like it the first time I saw it, and I didn't like this film very much the first time I saw it because I didn't know what it was. And if I hadn't like read some reviews from some weird Swedish newspapers and like kind of looked at some of the stuff that Aster talked about, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed this film on the second viewing, and I would have torn into you more, and you would have deserved it. But my appreciation for this film has gone up tenfold, and I think when we first left the theater, I was like, like 6 out of 10.
We were both very disappointed, which, I mean, we had the highest of expectations, and
Mistakes.
also, like Mike Calev said, it's completely different watching it on your own, like in the dark with no outside noises, teenagers in the theater giggling, whatever. So that's part of the reasons why I picked this, because I really enjoyed the second viewing more, and I was hoping that you guys would as well. So we've been at it for a while. You want to get in the final
I feel like
final
we
ratings?
talked like a few more things we missed, but
Okay,
yeah,
let's go back to the beginning and
no.
make sure we didn't miss anything.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's get into it.
You want to start?
No, you can start.
All right, I'll start. It was my pick. Like we've said before, I was kind of disappointed in my first viewing. My second viewing, not that it really matters, but I saw that it was on Amazon, and I was like, I'm just gonna put this on and kind of do chores, like whatever, and let it play. And I ended up just sitting down and watching the entire movie on my own, and I was like, wow, like that's awesome. And even since then, I've seen it like 2 more times, and every time I watch it, I notice more things about it, even like everything that we talked about, her becoming one with Sweden with the grass growing. And it's one of those movies that every time you watch it, you'll pick up something else, which adds to it, in my opinion. Like I said, can't say a whole lot about it that we haven't already. The cinematography and the score are absolutely amazing. The setting and costume is all really cool. Obviously, would have preferred a little bit more gore, but like you said, it's kind of like a black comedy, kind of added to the eeriness of a lot of the kills being off screen. Anyway, I'll get to the final. I'll give this right now a 92 out of 100.
Okay, now 1,000.
Yeah, just in case you're curious.
Just curious again, what did you give The Witch?
80,
I don't remember.
91, I believe. It was a 91.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, that would make sense. I don't know. Whatever, you guys go.
No, sure, it's fine.
The more I get into my ratings and how I rated other movies, the more my scale doesn't make
I
sense,
was
and I
just
don't
curious.
like that.
It doesn't matter, but I was just curious, like, are they close? I couldn't remember.
They're very close.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're both would be top 5 horror movies that's come out in the last 20 years at least.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, maybe your scoring rubric needs a revisit. Some of us in the group have done that recently, and I think it's been very fruitful and useful to kind of compare movies as we get further through this podcast. But I enjoyed this film a lot more on the second viewing. I think I've said that 100 times. I think that the acting's 9 out of 10, the effects are 9 out of 10, the score is 9 out of 10. It's so essential to, again, the dissonance between the black comedy and the truly horrifying and graphic and just the mind fucking that goes on like between the two of them. Like you empathize with Danny and you hate Christian for who he is, and that's a very visceral reaction to seeing somebody who, with their own faults, is being ignored and shunned aside and, kind of left to deal when she can't. The narrative, it's weird. There's some stuff I like about it. There's some stuff I don't like. So I gave that a 7 out of 10. And the cinematography is a 9 out of 10. It's a gorgeous film. And I expect nothing less from Aster, especially when it's done in full sunlight in an idyllic valley. And enjoyment, 45 out of 50. So all in all, it's an 88, which I think is what I scored The Witch
That's exactly
as well.
what you gave
And
Witch.
These are very different films.
Oh my gosh,
I think
so
The Witch
different.
is actually a way better horror film.
Yeah,
But
I might agree.
The fact that we talked about this for like 2 hours plus, and it's so polarizing the community, like a modern classic. I hate to bandy that around, but it is, and people will be talking about this film. I don't know about 100 years from now, but definitely 10, 20 years from now.
Yeah. And, I was a little bit surprised at how polarizing this was. Because like I've mentioned before, and you guys both know me, like I don't watch trailers. I like to go in very blind. Like this is the trailer for the movie. Ari Aster has a new movie. Done. Take my money. You don't need to tell me anything else. I will go see it. Same with Eggers. Same with Jordan Peele. Same with these guys that are kind of doing this thing right now. So I didn't really go in with much expectation, and after I left, I did very much like it, but I tried to leave all of that behind because I wanted to forget about it and have a second viewing that was similar to what I had, where I got a lot of new things and was reminded of the things that I liked about it. But I watched this movie again here, and I really very much enjoyed it. I think that we've talked a lot about it. I'm kind of surprised, like I said, that you enjoyed it so much. I thought for sure it was when I was watching, I was like, man, I think I understand why Rob didn't love this movie the first time he saw it. And I don't know if this will make much more of an impression on him. That being said, I was surprised at how polarizing it was because I didn't read the reviews. I just let it be what it was and I walked away. And so when I started writing my paper on this, I was looking at my paper. When I started writing about this and reviewing it, I was looking at so many negative reviews. Now, critically, it's very acclaimed and it has a lot of praise for the cinematography, notably also the acting performance of Florence Pugh. And Ari Aster is just kind of like that new hot boy on the block, But a lot of people really tore into this. There's a lot of user ratings, not that that matters, but like on Google or like Rotten Tomatoes that are like 1 stars, and people just hated this movie. I think a lot of it is it's long. I think a lot of it is misleading, and there's a lack of like gore, and I think that people wanted Hereditary too, and I think that it's just a strange art house film that doesn't shy away from smelling its own farts. You already know I love it, so we'll get to the score. For me, it's a 92. Same as Sweet Bill. He and I scored this movie the same, and I have to give it just a slight nod to The Witch, but I also agree with Rob. I think The Witch is probably a better and more traditional horror film, but this movie knocks it out of the park in terms of cinematography. Very ambitious, again, with the set design, the costume design. The acting was outstanding. The score is outstanding, and I loved watching it. You guys know me. I started this movie late, and I was worried at being a 2.5-hour runtime that I might get the winkies. But from the moment I pushed play, I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, sitting upright and hanging on to every second of this film. And there's not a lot of things. And yeah, sure, I love film and I watch horror films all the time, but there are not very many films that command my attention like this one. And I think it's because there's so much going on. We could talk for another 2.5 hours. And Elmers, we apologize. Remind yourself, I said I was gonna practice brevity here, and I think I have.
You tried.
Fucking I have. Like there's so much to unpack. 10, 20, 50 years from now, I think they're still talking about this film. I can't wait. I look forward to the next project from Aster, from Hugh. I'll check out anything. And now I'm listening to the Haxan Cloak. Like my background on my phone, I changed to one of the drawings inside the house. You're making a Midsommar deranged comedy playlist on Spotify.
I have Midsommar screenshot on my wallpaper as
well. We
well.
are all just damn. So that brings me to my next point of conversation here. Next week's movie.
Yeah, what are we watching?
So we find ourselves stumbling into these themes. We did the classics. We did Alien, Texas Chainsaw, The Thing. And we kind of found ourselves with these new classics. And I know you guys were waiting for me to assign more horror homework, but I've changed my pick to reflect another, what is considered widely to be a modern classic. And we loved The Witch. And then to be fair, we loved The Thing and we loved Alien. And I want to try to visit something that will be a little bit more polarizing between the three of us. And I want to visit something that I know we've all seen, and I don't think any of us liked, actually. And this is a horror classic, and it's next week's movie. And it's going to be 2014 Jennifer Kent's The Babadook.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So I know you guys weren't expecting that.
No,
No.
I was not. I don't know. I didn't know what to expect, but it was not that. Yeah, I did not like this movie, but I saw it a long time ago, and it got a lot of love. So,
Babadook is a gay icon. I just want to say that.
Really?
Kind of.
Save it for the pod.
Yeah, save it for next week. We've running long already. But yeah, I didn't really care for this movie at all. It's very hyped.
Have you only seen it once?
I've only seen it once. People love the writing. They love the source material. They love that it was the debutante Jennifer Kent's debut. Obviously, that's what debutante means. But this film,
It wasn't a dancer that she took to a ball.
but the film is highly praised. And there was a couple other of these quote unquote modern classics that I was considering, but I wanted to try to push us out of our comfort zone. And Rob, you weren't a fan of this when you saw it either.
I wasn't in love with it, and it'll be interesting to take another look at it. I don't think that one is a black comedy though.
Have you only seen this once?
I've only seen the Babadook once.
Yes, and I assume we all saw it probably around like 14, 15, 16 even.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
there
pretty
was a
close after it
crazy
came
amount of
out.
hype online about it.
Lots of
Exactly.
Reddit love for that one.
A lot of like Oceania horror fans that were like, "This is the best thing to come out since whatever." Some other movie about it's some movie about like killer hogs in Australia. I'm not even kidding.
Oh no,
Ooh.
that's
Killer
called Outback.
Yeah, it was like this is the best thing since Outback.
Or is it Razorback? There's two of them.
I don't know, but there's a bloomin' onion in there somewhere.
Well, TGIF, and thank you for joining us again on another episode of 13th and Elm. This was a long one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If not, fuck off.
Well, if not, just stop listening to it halfway through. Whatever. But definitely watch this film. It's a black comedy. If you have time, do a double feature: Modern Romance and Midsommar.
Also, check out Midsommar Black Comedy playlist on Spotify, and also listen to the companion podcast. And if you also have time, go ahead and check out the 3-hour director's cut available from A24 Shop online. And yeah, after you've lost an entire fucking weekend, you might be just as crazy as Danny was by the end of this movie.
Definitely consume large amounts of hallucinogens. And look out for the Rob cut. It's going to be totally silent with a new soundtrack and Swedish subtitles.
I thought Rob was half cut, just the underside.
Shh. We don't need to get into it.
Save it for the pod.
Save it for the pod.
Leave us some comments. What do you think about Midsommar?
Yeah.
Let us know.
What do you think about what we think about Midsommar? Let us know.
Yeah. How wrong are we?
What do you think we might think about what you think about Midsommar? Go ahead and
All iterations.
leave it in the comments
Thank you,
below.
Elmers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, pull up with us, watch 2 films. Come on, watch 2 films. If you scared, don't come over here. 13 M, 13 M, 13 M.